How's it going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is What If Deku Had Bond's Powers, the movie. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. And now, let's begin.
Take that, you stupid Deku! A kid yells, kicking the 5-year-old Zuko down into a muddy puddle. As all of his clothes become drenched in the muddy water, Zuko stands up, now soaked in this wet, disgusting water. For his body, he would stare up at the kid, now with tears slowly flowing down his open, wide eyes. The kid would only stare at Zuko before spitting at his feet before walking away. Maybe now you'll think before acting against me. Just remember, you're a quirkless little kid. You're not gonna be able to do anything to me, middle schooler would say, walking off after just kicking Izuku. As Izuku would be staring at this kid walk away into the distance, he would then look down at his hands. Was all that kid's words true? Was he really just a worthless Deku? That's not right, can it? Izuku hadn't gone to any type of preschool at all, since his parents had mostly just taught him at home, homeschooling him up until the age of 6, where they would then put him into school, since Hisashi, Izuku's father, had to go and work abroad, and Inko couldn't just be able to watch him at home while also having to work a job, so she would put him into school instead of homeschooling him like normal. As now see Izuku walking into school, where he would then sit down in class, as we now see a teacher walk into the room. Good morning, class. Today, I'm proud to announce we have a new student joining us today. Please stand up, Izuku. So, class, this is Izuku Midoriya. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Izuku? Hi, I'm Izuku. I like All Might, Izuku would say. His embarrassed face would then turn into one of excitement and enjoyment after muttering the words of All Might. Many of the other students would jump up in their seats with the mention of All Might, exclaiming that they like All Might too. Izuku's eyes would then shine before he would start mumbling all about his different All Might facts he had learned from watching some All Might cartoon program he had seen the night before. As Izuku would then go and sit down, the day would then go just as normal. However, once it was recess time, Izuku would be playing in the sandbox, as we now see a couple kids walk up to him. Hey, Izuku, what's your quirk? Bakugo's quirk here's an explosion quirk. Do you think you have a quirk even cooler than that? Izuku would sadly shake his head with a look of sorrow on his face. Oh, I don't have a quirk, Izuku would say in a soft, mellow voice, as all the kids standing around him would only just stare at Izuku, before they would all erupt into laughter. You're just quirkless? Really? You're useless then. You're not even gonna be able to get a job at McDonald's. I can't believe it. Can't believe we have things so useless looking up to All Might. Izuku would stare on in shock at all of the kids around him, as their laughing faces and cries of their laughter would echo throughout Izuku's brain. He would clench his head as tears would start falling out of his eyes, as he would start to get flashbacks of the day he had been kicked down by that awful middle schooler. Izuku, with tears in his eyes, would look over towards the recess monitor, pleading for help. However, she would only bat a blind eye towards him after hearing he had been quirkless, as a quirkless person didn't belong in this world. At least, that's what everyone thought. They were treated like dirt, like a piece of garbage. As Izuku, this sudden realization would come with the snap of a finger after telling everyone that he was quirkless. Izuku could only shake his head before standing up, hiding his eyes in the shadow of his hair, as he would look around at all of them, before he would walk, punching someone as they would fall down to the ground. Izuku would look at them, telling them to get out of his way, as he would then rush off, as the teacher would go, grabbing down at the student. Bakugo, are you okay? She would exclaim, seeing Izuku run away. Izuku, get back here, she would yell. However, Izuku didn't listen, only running away into the forest behind the school. As Izuku would be sitting there crying, rocking himself back and forth, just thinking about what he had done. His mother had always taught him, making sure it was embedded into his mind to be kind and to never hurt a soul. However, Izuku had just not cared about that rule she had set in place from just the beginning of Izuku's life, punching Bakugo Katsuki, who Izuku had even known that his mother, Mitsuki Bakugo, was even a very close friend to Inko. As Izuku would end up being found by a couple of pro heroes having to look for him, as if Izuku was a bit older and they would have known he was quirkless, most likely they just would have not cared about him. However, if it was a kid of Bakugo's stature with something so powerful like an explosion quirk, they would have been out there with tons of pro heroes looking for the boy, even posting up missing posters. However, this didn't happen to Izuku. Only 2 rejects of heroes, not even in the top 200, would end up looking for him, feeling sympathy for the small, quirkless child. As we all see Izuku sitting in a chair at home as his mother cries after getting a phone call of Mitsuki Bakugo telling her that her son had hit her own. As be crying before looking at Izuku before telling him to go upstairs, she couldn't believe that her own child was a monster. First he's quirkless, then he can't become a hero, his only dream in life, and now he hit a child? She had taught him not to act out like this, however he completely disobeyed her orders. We now cut forward 2 years as we see Izuku sitting upstairs in his room, staring down at a book about anatomy, just studying it closely. As with no friends, since he was quirkless, he couldn't go out and play, and so the basically only thing he had was watching just heroes save people and books, and so he would end up finding himself inside a lot, reading books, and this is when he would end up stumbling upon a cooking book, where Izuku would end up closely reading each and every detail about it, studying it closely, even asking his mother if he can cook too, learning how from a very young age. As we now see that it is Izuku's birthday, as he would be walking down the stairs, and would then with him at the table, serving him some eggs and bacon, as she would then ask him what he wants to do on his own birthday. "Oh, can we go to the library? I want to buy a cooking book. Yeah, I want to learn more about it," Izuku would say. Inko would think for a moment before nodding her head. "Okay, just finish your breakfast first and then we'll get going. That'll give me some time to get ready," Inko would say, going upstairs to go get changed into some clothes she could wear outside, as she was still in some pajamas from the night before. We see Izuku standing all dressed up with his shoes and everything, hopping up and down just as he couldn't wait. He was so excited to get his own cooking book. Sure, some of the cooking books he had read he had got from the library, however now he would finally have his own, something that he could finally study and read for himself, without having to return it just a week after getting it. So as Inko would end up getting Izuku, opening up the front door, Izuku would then walk out along with Inko as she would shut it before locking it. As they would then walk down into the car, Inko would put Izuku into his car seat before hopping into the driver's seat, as they would then pull out of the apartment complex and they would then drive off towards the local bookstore. As Inko would be driving, she would look back at Izuku before asking him, "So, Izuku, have you figured out what you wanted to buy before? Or have you figured out what you wanted to buy yet?" she would ask. However, Izuku would only shake his head. "No, I don't really have anything in mind just yet. I really hope just to see anything that catches my eye," Izuku would say. He was quite the smart and bright 8-year-old, having only just time to read books, so he would just grow a habit of getting smarter and smarter by reading tons of these textbooks, even sometimes stumbling upon his father's study where he would have tons of college textbooks for Izuku to read. All of the sudden, however, Izuku would stare on through the windshield as Izuku would be turning around, talking to him. As Izuku would then say, "Mom, watch out!" However, it was too late. A villain's foot had stomped right in the middle of the road as Inko would swerve her car, causing it to tip for halfway, slamming into a building before it would end up flipping over multiple times, slamming into the back hood of the villain. As the car would lie resting down, completely just shattered in pieces, Zuko would be upside down, dangling in his own car seat, completely just unaware of what happened. However, Zuko would end up opening his eyes as the sun's figure would be standing right in front of him. Man, this is sad, the figure would say. Zuko's eyes would open after an intense ringing would be going all throughout Zuko's ears. What? Who are you? Zuko would mutter as the person would look down at him. Oh, I am Bon. Anyway, look, kid. I've seen your life play out before my eyes, and I'd have to say, it's not pretty. And plus, you're one of the kindest people I've ever seen. And I just can't have all your kindness go to waste, now can I? Plus, with all of the events today, especially on your birthday, I'll let you figure that out for yourself, but I just want to give you a little gift. Think of it as me just as a gift and reward for all of the kindness you've shown, even after countless years of bullying. The person would say before handing Zuko just a glowing orb of light. Zuko would look at it before reaching out, grabbing it, as if on instinct. As he would end up grabbing it, all of a sudden he would wake up once again in his car seat. As he would end up clicking the button, allowing him to be released, now standing on the ceiling or the roof of his car. As he would end up going through one of the shattered windows, crawling through it, he would end up seeing the mangled, torn-up body of his own mother 15 feet in front of him. As Zuko would see this staring on, he couldn't believe it. There, his own mother. Why? This just didn't make any sense. Zuko, seeing this, all of a sudden a hero out of nowhere would come down before looking on at the scene. Oh my, I'm so sorry. Someone get some people here to take care of this kid. I'm so sorry you had to see this, the hero would say towards Zuko. However, Zuko could only shake his head, completely speechless. Why him? Why was all of this happening to him? He still didn't understand his dream, but it just didn't make any sense. Zuko would end up rushing away from the hero, not wanting to just go into the system. He had read plenty of books about adoption and things, just something an 8-year-old shouldn't have known about. And so he knew if someone was orphaned, then most likely they'd go into an adoption system. And without anyone to contact his father, Hisashi, he was most likely going to be adopted or fostered, and he just couldn't care enough for that. He didn't want that to happen. His one and only parent was his mother, well, besides his father, of course. However, he really wasn't there in his life. As we see Zuko rushing back, he would end up wiggling on the doorknob of his house, finding that Inko hadn't locked it properly, as the door would then fly open. Zuko would end up rushing into the house, grabbing a bunch of books that he could carry before running into the forest. Zuko, just completely acting on impulse, would rush into the forest, placing down his books, before just having a feeling of creating a hut. That's all he really could do, creating a hut out of straw and leaves that he could find, foraging for different assortments of items. As we now cut forward just around 6 to 7 years, Zuko is now 15 years old, as he would be walking down the street. He had basically gotten a reputation for stealing, as that's pretty much all he could do. He was too young to get a job for himself, and too young to get arrested, only having to go off of getting warnings, so he could basically steal all he wanted. So he'd be stealing his food, however he most times get captured, unless he was lucky and somehow managed to get away. This slowly would end up training Izuku's body to get faster and faster, having to run away from the cops, with just being able to get more strength from being beaten up every single time. Sure, with the powers of Bon's immortality, Izuku couldn't be killed or get hurt fully. However, this would still teach Izuku how to handle pain. And so with all this training, Izuku would end up being stronger and wittier than the average 15-year-old. And so with that, we now see Izuku strolling the streets looking for a target. As he was in a presumably bad neighborhood of Hosu City, and he knew that people around here was just looking for someone who was most likely lost and was most likely rich, as the downtown area where all of the movie theaters and casinos was just around the corner. So he was looking for someone that would be an easy target that he could easily just snatch all of their items and run quickly. However, all of a sudden, Izuku would start to hear rumbling from a alleyway right in front of him. As Izuku would continue walking, he would look to his side before seeing an entire dumpster start shaking. As Izuku would then walk over towards the dumpster, as he would then kick it. All of a sudden, a blonde-haired girl would poke her head out of the dumpster. "What kind of sewer rat are you?" Izuku would say, looking her up and down. "Why are you calling me a sewer rat? I'm just in a dumpster." Izuku would only sigh before looking at her. "So, do you mind explaining why you're in this dumpster?" "Oh, it's nothing. My parents, they just abandoned me because of my villainous quirk. I attacked someone at school, and I just finally had enough." "Oh, well, I guess that's enough of that topic," Izuku would say after seeing the girl look like she was about to have some sort of panic attack. As Izuku would say that, he would then walk towards her, giving out a hand. She would then grab it as Izuku would pull her out of the dumpster. "Well, I'm Izuku. I don't really have a last name since my mom is dead. Oh, and I'm Toga," she would say, not giving her last name as well. "Okay, that's fine," Izuku would say before walking off. She would then rush up to Izuku. "Wait, where are you going?" "I mean, I'm just walking back to my house." "No, why do you care?" Izuku would ask, blatantly on towards the stranger. "Oh, I don't really have a place to stay, it's quite a lot." I get you, Izuku would say, interrupting. "If you want, you can crash at my place," Izuku would say once again, as Toga's eyes would then light up. "Wait, really?" she would say, jumping into Izuku's arms, hugging him tightly. "Oh, thank you," she would continue saying. Izuku would then grab her by both of her shoulders, picking her up before placing her back onto the ground. "We just met not even a minute ago. That's a bit much, Not saying I didn't like the hug at all, but let's save it for another time, not when we're in the middle of this area," Izuku would say. Toga would nod her head as Izuku would then lead her back into the forest. "So, your house is in the forest, huh? Please don't tell me you're just leading me out here to do something to me." "Oh, nothing like that at all. Besides, why would I do that? That's just not right, you see," Izuku would say, as he would then pull up to his hut that he had for 7 years now. "Well, here it is, home sweet home. I can't say it's the most lavish place in the world, but it certainly is cozy," Izuku would say with the campfire still burning. "Wait, this is your house?" "Yup, it's a lovely one-bedroom studio apartment with no bathroom. So, as you can tell, it's pretty roomy," Izuku would say as Koga would only look at it. "But where am I gonna sleep?" Izuku would hop down into the patches of leaves he created as his quote-unquote bed. "Well, the only place is right here next to me, so that's basically if you want any place to sleep under cover from the rain, that's what you got," Izuku would say. "But not even 10 minutes ago you just had to stop with the hugging." "Well, remember, like I said, I didn't say I didn't like it, but it's really up to you if you want to stay here. I'm not forcing you at all," Izuku would say with a sly grin on his face. Toga would only stare down at the person before laughing, or hopping down next to him. "So is this really all you do?" "Well, I mostly just sit here reading some of those books. However, they've pretty much deteriorated since I don't have a proper place to store them out of the rain. So I've basically just devoted either stealing some books and just stealing food. I don't really have the money to pay for it, so That's all I got right now, Zuko would say, smiling, as would laugh once again as just how much she likes Zuko would grow even more. So, what do you plan on being, Toga? Oh, I don't know yet. I really don't have any direction right now. Well, I guess we're one of the same then, huh? I wanted to be a hero years ago, but now I really don't have any reason to. Plus, I don't even know what UA is anymore. Plus, I haven't been in school at all for the past 7 years. Thanks, Mom, Zuko would mutter under his breath. So, I really can't join UA High School, which was my only plan from the age of 4. So, right now, I'd say both of us are pretty much on the same plate. So, yeah, Zuko would say. Toga would nod her head as Zuko then stand up. Well, I'm gonna go on some errands, you know. So, what do you want from the store? From the store? I thought you just said you had no money. Exactly. I don't. Toga would then just get a sudden realization. Oh, okay. Can you get me a rotisserie chicken by any chance? Toga would say. Zuko would nod his head. Alright, I got you. Before walking off, Zuko would then go to the store, getting a chicken and just go back and drop it off with Toga before going off to go explore once again. As, of course, Zuko had some people chasing him, however, they really couldn't care less for like a $10 chicken. So, as Zuko would be walking, all of a sudden, he would end up seeing tons of people just gathering in one place. As Zuko would look up, he would see these massive arches, as Zuko would end up being pushed in to the place as well. Huh, this place looks cool. Maybe I'll crash here for a little bit, Zuko would say. I mean, it does look pretty expansive. Hopefully no one finds me for a little while, Zuko would say before you would end up being pushed into a hallway. Well, I guess I'm here now, not having enough time to look around and see all the scenery, what it was. Zuko would end up hearing a bunch of people end up talking about some sort of test before he would end up hearing over the intercom system saying, "Alright, examinees! Now, for this test, all you have to do is just destroy as many robots as possible. And so, the test will begin in 3, 2, 1. Right as the test begins, Zuko looks around at all the examinees surrounding him. It seems like there's barely any examinees here. What kind of test is this? Well, as it gives him a good fight, who cares? Zuko would think to himself before jumping off. However, he would end up seeing girls just create stuff out of nowhere, as he would end up running up to her, looking at her in excitement. Yo, wait, do you have some sort of creation quirk? That's awesome. Real quick, do you mind, creating me some sort of weapon type thing? It's a 4-poled weapon with chains connecting each pole together. It would be a really big help, you know, Zuko would say quickly, as she'd be like, okay? The black-haired girl would say, as Zuko would then smile, sparkles in his eyes. Oh, thank you, he would say in excitement, as she would then hand him the weapon. Alright, this is gonna be fun, Zuko would say, as he would end up now using this weapon before using his ability Snatch to snatch the head of a 3-pointer right off of its body, before he would start swinging his weapon, round and around, sort of like a massive mace, hitting tons of robots all in one, as he would destroy these tons of robots, getting 40 points in one go, as this would catch the eye of some of the teachers watching. Yo, Nezu, who happens to be that kid? I didn't see him in the written exam portion of the select examinees. Oh, you didn't? That's quite strange. So you didn't see him. I mean, maybe you missed him. Nezu, how was I supposed to miss him? There was only like 8 people that were actually there. Well, it's too late to take him out now. Let's just watch what his abilities are. I mean, he already shows quite improvement and quite the knowledgeable ability with his powers. It's quite good. It is quite good, Nezu would say to himself, as Aizawa would only look at him, seeing Nezu as if he was plotting something in his own mind. Aizawa would only sigh before just letting Nezu have his train of thought. As we now see Izuku destroying tons of all of these just robots, even sometimes with his own hands if he really wanted to, as Izuku would end up smiling to himself, thinking that he never had this much fun in years, just punching all of these robots easily. As Izuku, all of the sons, however, would end up looking up to see a massive zero-pointer looking down on him, as Izuku would then crack his knuckles before cracking his neck as well. "Well, here goes nothing," Zuko would say, crouching down before jumping up towards the zero-pointer. As his weapon would then be in hand, he would then launch himself towards the zero-pointer before easily beheading the zero-pointer with his weapon, as the head of the zero-pointer would then end up sliding off of its body, falling down into one of the buildings, slamming down into it as the building would end up collapsing down. Well, that was quite easy, Zuko would think to himself before seeing 3 other zero-pointers all look at him right behind him. Zuko would only jump back, landing on the top of one of the zero-pointers' heads, the one in the middle. As Zuko would end up seeing this, he would end up using his just weapon to end up smashing it down into the zero-pointer's head, as a massive hole would end up created right through the middle of the zero-pointer. As this would happen, the zero-pointer would start to wobble back and forth before Zuko would end up jumping off of its head and kicking it from the side, as it would then go right into one of the zero-pointers on its right side. With that, Zuko would then behead the other zero-pointer with ease. After this, however, Zuko would end up landing, as he would then end up hearing that the special exams are now finished and that they may now go home. Zuko, hearing that, was just wondering, wonder what this was. Well, who cares anyways. It was fun while it lasted, he would think, as he would end up walking out, as he would end up running into that black-haired girl once again. "Yo, miss, you were the one that helped me earlier, right?" "Oh, yes, I was. Do you mind telling me what this was? I don't actually know." You're telling me you don't know? This was the special chosen exams for UA. This is how you get into UA high school. Well, we're all guaranteed to get in it, but this just chooses whether we're in Class 1A or Class 1B. "Oh," Zuko would say. Thanks for that, I guess. I kind of forgot that knowledge," Zuko would say, rubbing the back of his head, as the person would only just be like, "Okay, sure," she would think to herself, as we now see Izuku running back towards the hut that he was, as it had started to rain and he was somewhat worried about the girl that he had saved just a couple of hours ago. As Izuku would end up making it back there, she would end up looking at him just with a mad look. "You really had to leave me out here in the rain for 3 hours?" she would say angrily towards Zuko, getting up, punching him right across the face. "Oh, come on, it wasn't that long, was it?" Zuko would ask, as she would then point at an alarm clock plugged into a potato. "Okay, I guess it was that long. Look, I'm sorry, okay? I just got mixed up in some UA entrance exam. I didn't even know it was the entrance exam, okay? My bad, I'll take the blame on that one," he would say, as the girl would look at Izuku. "So you're telling me you somehow got onto the UA campus and took the UA's entrance exam without even knowing?" "Yup," Izuku would simply say, as the girl would only blatantly look at him. "You know what? Sure you did. Alright, fine." We now cut back to UA to see Nezu, Aizawa, and the rest of the teachers all talking with each other, looking over at the footage of Izuku. "This kid's techniques and abilities are insane. He far outmatches many of the third years in 3A too," some of the teachers would say, as Aizawa would nod his head. "Yeah, I haven't seen a power like this since the likes of All Might in this school. It's quite crazy how powerful Izuku is." As all of them would be staring on, well, not Izuku, as this kid is, all of them would be staring on at the footage. And yet you're telling me they didn't put in even a sheet? They didn't even get lumped in with the special group of kids, huh? So how are we gonna find this kid? Because there's no chance he's not gonna become a hero with that type of power. We gotta get him here before he ends up becoming a villain even. Yes, that's the only problem. I have absolutely no clue where this person might be. Well, and the only solution must be we gotta give out a search party, right? Yes, that's one way to do it, Nezu would say. Well, then let's begin with the search party. So, it can't be really that hard, can it? Well, we'd have to search the entire likes of the country, so maybe it will be a bit hard. And plus, he'd be living in the forest even, so we don't know if he's living in the city or not. So, why don't we go out and start asking some of the city folk where this person might be? Yep, that sounds good. Let's do that then. So we now see Aizawa walking around with a flyer of Izuku's picture in Hosu City as he would end up walking over towards a shop clerk's store. Hey, sir, I have a question for you. Huh? Yeah, what you need, the shop owner would say. Have you happened to seen this person by any chance? That kid, the shop owner would say, looking increasingly on towards just the missing poster. Oh, that kid! Man, that idiot just happened to steal a rotisserie chicken from me earlier today.
I see. Thank you for your time, sir, Aizawa would say before walking out of the building. As he and Nezu continue on walking, all of a sudden, Aizawa looks over beside him as he then sees across the street the same figure that he and the rest of the teachers had seen at the special UA entrance exam. As Aizawa would see this, he would follow the figure with his eyes as he would then see Izuku just walk off in the distance. However, him and Nezu would both start to follow this figure. However, they would stay far enough behind so that it was unnoticeable to Izuku. As they would finally make it to the forest's edge, Izuku would continue on walking until he would make it back to his hut. As he would, and without even turning around, would tell both Aizawa and Nezu to reveal themselves. So, are you two gonna stay hidden there forever, or are you finally gonna come reveal yourselves to me? Wow, I'm surprised. Well, not really with the amount of power you displayed at the entrance exam, but still, your level of technique is quite high for your age, don't you think? Nezu would say as Izuku would turn around to see with the tiny little white bear-looking thing. Well, you could say that, Izuku would say, smiling. So, what brings you two here? Would say, well, we happened to see what your UA entrance exam did, and we just saw how powerful you were, and we came to formally invite you to come and be a student here at UA High School. That's quite the high offer, and I'm expecting you want me there so badly you came and searched me out. I quite full of flattery, don't you think? Well, I'll join on one condition. You let my friend here, Toga, join too. Oh, you have a friend here, Nezu would say before Izuku would step aside, as they would then see a blonde-haired girl sitting under Izuku's small hut. So, I guess there is another person here. Hello. I'm guessing you're Toga. Well, of course. Yes. Who else? I don't see anyone else here. Nezu would look at her before just awkwardly laughing. Yeah, I guess so. Alright, well, then that's a deal. Both of you will be expected to be at UA tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Good luck with that. I'll just drop off your UA uniforms here. I just somehow happened to find out the right sizes. Let's just say it's a lucky guess, as he would say, looking at both Izuku and Toga. Okay, that's kind of creepy, but I'll let it slide for now, Izuku would say towards Nezu, who would only awkwardly laugh even more, before him and Aizawa would then end up leaving. We now see Izuku walking into school with Toga, as they would then sit down in the back of the classroom at their desks. Both of them sitting there, all of a sudden, they would then see the rest of their class end up walking into the room, as they would all then sit down.
Good grief, y'all took so damn long to quiet down, Aizawa would say, walking into the room, as Izuku would then recognize the teacher, knowing that he was one of the people that came to invite him to come to this school in the first place just last night. As Izuku would be staring at the teacher, he would then point up towards everyone's PE uniforms. Alright, go to the locker rooms, get changed into these, and then meet me at testing site E. We're gonna be doing a test. Aizawa would say as everyone would nod their head before going off towards the locker rooms. Both him and Toga would be quite confused, having just had no word or map to themselves. Luckily, everyone else in their class was also confused, so when Izuku pulled up as the latest person to the locker rooms, everyone else just didn't care, as they were all late too. Once everyone was changed, they would head towards testing round E, where they would then meet up with Aizawa, who would then toss a ball towards Bakugo Katsuki and would tell him to toss the ball as far as he possibly could into the distance, as would then wind back his fist, tossing the ball into the air, as Aizawa would then look down at his phone. 750 meters. That's quite good. Oh, wow, this looks like so much fun, someone in the crowd would say, causing Aizawa to turn towards them with a sharp glare. What was that? Do you mind telling me who happened to say that? Aizawa would say, as all of a sudden everyone would step back to reveal a pink-haired, alien-looking girl standing there with her fist pumped in the air. What? Do you guys not like fun? Come on, I can't be the only one, she would say, as everyone would stare at her and just wondering how she was already yelling so much when wasn't embarrassed at all. Everyone was still new to each other and had no clue who anyone was. So the tests would then continue without any problems, as Izuku would reveal to be one of the strongest people there. In fact, the strongest person there, getting first place in every single event there was, with just complete ease. It just looked like Izuku wasn't trying at all, and it just didn't seem like it was even a fraction of his power. Everyone just felt so far out of Izuku's league. So when the day would come to an end, Izuku would be packing up his things, as he would be talking to some of his new friends that he made. So, what made you want to yell out saying that it'd be so much fun? You know, I just have to ask. Oh, well, it just sounded like fun, so I decided to exclaim it, you know? You are quite an interesting one, Izuku would say, shaking his head. So, you and Toga, you both are friends too, right? Well, me and Kirishima are friends as well. So, just a way to get to know each other and to make more friends. How about you and Toga and me and Kirishima go on a double date with both of you? It's not really one, just sort of as a form to get to know each other, Mina would say with all the confidence in the world. Izuku would look at her with a blatant look. What do you say, Toga? He would say, looking towards her. Well, okay, she would say. That sounds fine, exclaiming once again after thinking about it for another second. As this would be happening, they would then walk out of the UA halls, as Mina would be tugging along with Kirishima's arm, making sure that he followed along. He was still a bit confused at this, just being pulled along by someone new. Well, someone that he had known since middle school, now taking him on a double date. It was all quite an interesting experience. However, before Izuku could even leave the confines of the UA campus, he would be stopped by Bakugo Katsuki, one of his former classmates. As Mina, Kirishima, and Toga would all look back at Izuku, as he would then just wave them on. You guys go on ahead, I'll catch up with you later. I have to deal with something right now, Izuku would say, as they would all nod their heads in understanding before walking off. Are you Izuku Matoria? The person that went missing 7 years ago? The one and only? Who else would it be? Izuku would say. Look, I'm sorry about what I did and said all those years ago. I was a naive kid, and I just didn't know anything and know any better. I was just so hungry for the attention and saying those rude things about you. It really just filled that thirst, I guess. Oh, it's okay, don't sweat it. It doesn't really matter to me anymore. That was 7 years ago, after all. So, why just linger on the thoughts of 7 years ago when you could linger on the thoughts of now? So, I'll just let you go. I gotta catch up with something, Zuko would say before rushing off, running, sprinting to hopefully meet up with his newly found friends. As Zuko would then meet up with Emma, with the girl he met yesterday, and another girl he met today, and he met today as well, he would meet up with them in a fancy-looking restaurant. So, who's paying for this? Because there is no chance in hell I'm paying for this. Well, I can't pay for it either, Toga exclaimed. So you guys are telling me you're gonna go on a double date, not split the paycheck at all? Come on, this just doesn't make any sense. Zuko stared at both of them before just saying, well, look, I don't even have a house. Well, I don't even have a roof over my head. I mean, if you count leaves, that could work. I live in the forest, and so does she. So, you guys pretty much are the only ones that actually have paper money, Zuko would say. Fine, I guess I'll cover it. What about you, Kirishima? You do some as well. He would only look at her before being like, man, you dragged me out here, and now you're gonna... You know what, fine, he would exclaiming, as it was only a manly thing to do. As they would be sitting eating some of their food, Zuko would stare down at it before trying it. You would think how it was absolutely delicious before thinking about ways he could also improve it, as he also still studied how to be a cook, cooking in some of the very ways he could, as he sort of adopted a just cooking off of the land style, where he would hunt either a deer and then cook it in either a pot or pan that he happened to steal. So with that, I'll cut forward 2 weeks' time, as Kirishima, Mina, Zuko, and Toga had become just some of the best of friends. They forming their own friend group, kind of like Zuko, just Ida, and Uraraka was in canon My Hero Academia. So with that, we now see all of them sitting in the classroom, with all of them just talking back and forth. So, what are you guys gonna do later today? I was thinking about maybe we could hit up an arcade. Once again, I don't really have any money to pay for it, say. I mean, I could somehow find a way to get some, but that would take a little bit of time. So, I'll meet you guys up at it just around 30 minutes after you all arrive there. Well, I guess that sounds like a plan. Yes, Kirishima would say, yep, alright, that sounds fine. So would Toga. As all of the sudden, stomping would be heard from down the halls. As soon enough as the stomping sounds would get closer and closer, the room would start to shake as well. As all of them would feel this island shaking along with the rest of their class, everyone would look towards the hallway, some of them even crowding around the door. Looking out the small, tiny window on the door, all of a sudden the door would be smashed through by 2 shining golden fists. Ha ha! A loud voice would exclaim, laughing, as there stood in the hallway was the #1 hero, standing in all of his glory, was All Might. Everyone just couldn't believe it. The golden, shining figure of hope was standing right before them. All Might would stare at some of the people he had knocked backwards into the wall behind them, along with just these shatters of wood all throughout the classroom. I guess I kind of made a mess of this classroom, didn't I? Well, I'm sorry about that, he would say before looking around. So, anyway, who's ready for their first hero class? He would proudly exclaim. Many people would raise their hands. Me, many of them would say. Zuko would stare on towards the #1 hero before wondering what was going to happen next. Well, you can't be heroes without your hero costumes, now can you? Might would say with a smirk before slamming his finger down onto a massive red button, as all of a sudden a massive add-on in the wall would start coming out of the wall, with suitcases on these sort of coat hanger looking things, as all of them would be given a number, where they would then look at the number, matching it up with their suitcase, grabbing their suitcase and taking it off of the hook, before opening it, which it would then reveal their hero costume. Zuko would open his before staring down at the clothes that he had in it. It was not like the most unique or well, it was sort of unique. It wasn't the most streamlined hero costume with a cape and all of this and that. However, it was sort of simple and not meant to draw attention to him, as when Izuku was on the streets, if you were going to just try to steal something, you wouldn't want to be wearing something flashy that would draw attention to you. You wanted to be wearing something simple and basic that would allow you to blend in with the crowd more. And so this is basically what Izuku would go for. So when a villain, or if Izuku was sneaking up on a villain, they wouldn't just easily be able to spot Izuku out as a hero right away. So as everyone would walk down to the locker rooms with their suitcases in hand, they would then all get changed before walking back or walking over towards City Site C, which was specifically requested by All Might. As they would all be walking there, Kirishima would run up to Izuku. "Hey, Izuku, why are you just wearing like normal everyday clothes? It seems kind of basic to me, don't you think?" "Yeah, well, I just don't really like drawing attention to me, as much as I do like some attention and fame, as much as everybody else. I just don't feel like, being just easily spotted as just your basic ordinary comic book hero that has a shining red cape flowing behind them. It's just kind of cliche to me, Kirishima would nod his head. "Yeah, I guess that does make sense." As this would be happening, Izuku, along with everyone else, would finally make it to testing site C or City C, where they would see All Might standing there, as he would then laugh. "Alright, class, today we're going to be doing a heroes vs. villains assignment. So, there's going to be 2 teams of 2, one hero team and one villain team. So, the heroes will have 15 minutes to go into the building specifically chosen by me and to either capture both of the villains by tying them up in the quirk-canceling tape or by touching the device supplied to us by the support course, and the villains will have 15 minutes to protect the device or capture both of the heroes. So the villains will now have 5 minutes to then go into the building and hide the device. So those 2 villains will be Izuku and Toga. The heroes will be Kirishima and Mina. So, villain team, you may now go into the building, All Might would proudly say, as Izuku would walk over to All Might, grabbing onto the device, as Izuku would lift it up with one hand, walking into the building, where Izuku would then start thinking about the perfect hiding spot, and he would just walk up all the way to the top floor and placing it down right square in the middle of it. As this would be happening, 5 minutes would have passed, as Izuku would end up sitting down or just staring up at the roof, waiting for anything interesting to happen. As All Might would then say that the heroes were now entering the building, Izuku would smile before cracking his knuckles as he was now ready for a fight. After cracking his knuckles, he would crack his neck before slamming open the top roof, or the roof door, jumping down all the way, slamming down into the road below. Getting up like nothing ever happened, like he didn't just jump off of a 5-story building, Izuku would then walk in to the building, opening up the door, where he would see both the backs of Mina Ashido and Kirishima as they would continue on walking like nothing ever happened. Izuku would end up walking right behind Mina before grabbing her by the head and slamming it down into the ground. As Kirishima would see this, he would use his quirk Harden before going in and punching Izuku right across the face. As this would give a scratch right across Izuku's face, however, it would heal instantly like nothing ever happened. Izuku would then get out his staff, as this staff was made out of multiple parts. It was basically like 3 or 4 parts, all connected by a chain, as Izuku would then just hold one side of it in one hand and the other in the other hand. It was kind of like just a bigger version of nunchucks. So with Izuku swinging these around, he would then swing, hitting Kirishima right in the head, as Shima would then get right back up like nothing ever happened, hardening his cork right at the perfect time so that nothing ever happened. By this time, Hina would then get up as well, before using her acid, throwing some of it right at Izuku, as it would land right on his arm, burning into his skin. However, it would then regenerate right back like nothing ever happened once again. "You're gonna have to try a lot harder than that to hurt me," Izuku would proudly exclaim. Izuku walking towards Kirishima. Kirishima would then throw a punch right at Izuku, landing it right in Izuku's stomach. As Izuku would continue on walking, pushing Kirishima's fist back, Izuku would then punch Kirishima right across the face, and then uppercutting him right into the second floor roof, slamming the hardened hero right into the second floor roof, where Toga just happened to be. As Toga would then get knives out before cutting slashing Kirishima right across the face, giving him a cut, where she would then get out some cord-canceling tape and wrapping it around Kirishima within an instant, tying him up quite easily, making sure that he wasn't going to be able to escape, at least not with his cork. So with that, we now see Izuku standing face to face with Mina Ashido as she was gliding around the small, cramped room with her acid, trying to get just more mobility, not wanting to have to face off against Izuku on a one-on-one. However, knowing that Kirishima was most likely out of the fight for at least a little bit, she didn't have a strategy other than to run. As using her acid, she would glide across the hallways, running away from Izuku, who was in a deep chase. However, he wasn't running as fastest. It was sort of just toying with her, saying stuff like, "Come on, don't run away from the inevitable. That's just not nice. You're only delaying what's going to happen next," Izuku would say, kind of creepily in a way. As we now Mina cut a corner where she would then see Kirishima tied up and Toga jumping out of nowhere with two knives in her hand, slashing, causing Mina to barely duck under these slashes, as she would then rush towards Kirishima, throwing acid at the cork-canceling tape, as it would then burn right through the tape. As Kirishima would then get up, he would stare right at Izuku before rushing at him, punching him across the face, punching him then right back into the stomach, sending him flying into a wall behind, as Kirishima jumped at him with such momentum that with his punch it had caused Izuku, who was forced to go completely the opposite direction. As we now see Toga fighting with slashing her acid, causing the acid to split into a different part, flying right behind her, destroying some of the wall behind. As would then go in fighting Toga, putting acid around her hand, punching Toga right across the face, causing acid to burn into Toga's cheeks. As his fight would then continue, it was sort of just like hand combat fighting for both of the fights. While Kirishima and Izuku were both fighting, Izuku had decided to just go bare knuckles and fight Kirishima, just like Kirishima was fighting him. And Toga and Mina would both be fighting, however Toga wouldn't drop her knife. So with that, we now see Izuku rushing towards Kirishima, as he would punch Kirishima right across the face, as Kirishima's hardening would end up shattering. As he would end up holding his face in pain, he would then feel the top of his head be smashed in by Izuku's fist, as Kirishima would topple down to the ground with his knees buckling under him from the extreme amount of force on top of him. He would look up to see Izuku now jumping in the air with his staff/nunchuck type weapon in hand before slamming it down on top of Kirishima's head, as he would then collapse completely unconscious because of the blow. As we now over to see Mina staring on at Toga, as Toga would then rush towards Mina, punching her right across the face, causing Mina to blink, which in a split second Izuku would then appear right in front of Mina, punching her right across the face. What about that? A combo move already. Appears we're quite the fast learners, he would say, directed on towards Toga, as she would only laugh. I guess you could say that, she would say, agreeing with Izuku's statement. as Izuku would then punch right across the face, now wielding his staff once again, slamming it right into the side of her neck, causing her to fall down to the ground, where Toga would then up on top of her, tying her up with the cork-canceling tape. As All Might would then come over the intercom, exclaiming, "And that's the victory! The villain team wins with just around 7 minutes left to go!" As Suku would end up smiling and knowing that his team had won, and just feeling of accomplishment since his team did win after all. So with that now in the book, we see Izuku carrying the unconscious Mina and Kirishima all the way back towards just the main meeting area where there was tons of TVs where they could watch all the fights happening. Izuku would drop them off where Recovery Girl would then take them from there to go give them healing, as All Might would then ask a question. "So, did anyone notice anything about that fight?" Momo would raise her hand before saying that both Toga and Izuku used teamwork to defeat both of them quite quickly. They also separated both of them, causing them to fight each other one-on-one due with each other's skill sets and power level. All Might would nod his head in agreement. Yes, it was quite the smart move to split both of them up. However, the team of villains also split up. So, in a way, it was kind of evening things out. It wasn't the best of strategies, but it did work after all, with the villains getting the victory. Alright, next up, the next team will be, All Might would say, as we now cut forward after the day had ended with Izuku and the rest of the class being dismissed. Izuku, basically already in his normal attire, he would end up walking into Recovery Girl's office. "Sup, Mina? Sup, Kirishima? I guess that arcade thing's gonna have to end today, won't it?" "Oh, no, I'm sure we'll still be able to get up and do it," she would say before getting up out of bed. Recovery Girl would rush in. Whoa, where are you guys going? Both of you have to rest up." "Oh, come on, Recovery Girl. You can't just let this slide one time," Mina would say, just in a disappointed saying, as Recovery Girl would only give her that look that said, "Really? Just really now?" As Mina would laugh. "I just want to hang out with my friends, you see? I'm not going to be able to do this in 40 years when I'm like your age and sad and lonely, you know?" Izuku would stare on at Mina. It's like, you really could have worded that better, but okay, Izuku would say before walking off, as Mina would try to catch up with him. So would Kirishima, as they would then catch up with Izuku and Toga. "So, we still going to the arcade then?" "Yup, ready as ever. Even after you smashed my face in multiple times, I'm sure I'll still be able to pound you in an arcade game I've specialized in for years," Kirishima would say, cracking his knuckles as if he was about to get into a fight. Izuku would laugh, saying, Sure you will," with all the confidence in the world echoing throughout Izuku's voice. We cut forward to see three of the just now group of heroes at the arcade, with Izuku just looking around in the streets before he would end up just grabbing someone's necklace with ease before walking over towards the arcade, slamming the necklace onto just the table where the seller would just give you tokens or whatever, this and that. As Izuku slamming the necklace down, the seller would look at it on the counter before handing Izuku some tokens. "There you go, kid. Go do whatever you want with that." Izuku would then meet up with Mina, Kirishima, and Toga, where they would then end up playing their games, as now see Izuku facing off against Kirishima, as Izuku will be facing off with him in sort of like a Mortal Kombat Street Fighter game, where we see Izuku getting his ass absolutely just destroyed by Kirishima in this arcade game. Kirishima was just mopping the floor with him, as Izuku was just horrible at this. Remember, he really just didn't bother with arcade games, and so Izuku had no practice at all. Yes, he was quite competitive, however, this really did nothing when he had no experience. So, with the inexperienced Izuku, he would end up saying, "Alright, fine. You may may be able to beat me in the arcade game, but I'll still be able to beat you in a fight any day of the week. You have me there, but I'll always have this game to come back onto," Kirishima would say, as Izuku would nod his head. As the day would come to an end, Toga would walk back towards the hut. However, Izuku would say and he was going to stay there for a little while, as Izuku would be practicing that game over and over and over again, wanting to be able to beat Kirishima. Izuku had locked in the thought of beating him because of just his competitiveness and just his want to win. So with that thought, Izuku would continue on practicing all night. The arcade owner really didn't see a problem with this, just saying, "Go knock yourselves out, kid. I really couldn't care less right now. This business is failing anyway. This arcade's shutting down in just about a month, most likely. So you do whatever you want. It's on me," he would say with a depressing gaze on towards Izuku. Izuku would sadly look on towards him because of his financial problems, which he could kind of see himself within the arcade owner, as the arcade owner had some financial problems, not being able to keep his business afloat, while Izuku just couldn't even buy a simple loaf of bread, having to steal to be able to get some money to legally buy anything. So with that, the day would finally end up coming to an end along with the night, as after the school day would end, Izuku would offer to 1v1 Kirishima in that arcade game once again, as Kirishima would agree, wanting to beat Izuku once again, having just lost to Izuku in a training match that they had to do with All Might in the hero course or hero class. So as they would walk up to the arcade, Deku would then put in some of the tokens before they would start to fight in the arcade game. However, Izuku would easily defeat Kirishima after Izuku had grinded the game for over 12 hours, learning all of its techniques and just ways you could easily beat it, or glitches or cheats. So with that, Izuku made sure to use full just ability of all of this, easily being able to defeat Kirishima. Kirishima did pose some of a threat if Izuku wasn't paying attention. However, with all of that practice, Izuku was easily able to defeat him. As Kirishima would then just ask, "Izuku, how did you get so good at this game?" "Oh, it's a trade secret after all. It's also a family secret, so I couldn't tell you," Zuko would say, as he would then decide, "Alright, I'm gonna call it a night. I'll see you guys tomorrow," he would say, waving goodbye, as Kirishima with basically just tears, "Come on, you can't just leave me hanging like that. You gotta tell me how you got so good at the game," he would say. However, Zuko would only laugh. "Not gonna happen, Kirishima." As we now see Toga and Izuku sitting in the hut. "So, Toga, I have a question for you." "Yes, Izuku? What's that?" "Look, we've been sleeping next to each other for a while now. So, plus I've also developed some kind of feeling for you. So what do you say dating a try, How about that?" Izuku would say. As Toga would only say, "Oh, Izuku, sure. I've been waiting for you to ask me out all this time. Can't believe it took you so long to finally ask me." "I appreciate the offer, Izuku, but..." "Oh, I'm just kidding, Izuku. Come here," Toga would say, jumping into Izuku's arms, hugging him tightly. Izuku would just say, "Okay, great." Just looking down at his clock, where he would then see that it was getting late. "Alright, I'm just gonna go to bed. I'm quite tired after beating Kirishima in that arcade game today." Toga would look at him before laughing, as they would then get into bed before going off to sleep. We cut forward 2 weeks, as we now see all of Class 1A walking into the classroom, many of them mumbling and just rumors about how they heard that today was going to be their first hero training, just field trip, and many of them couldn't wait. They were going to be going to some off-site location to learn how to become an even better hero. Everyone was so excited, and the atmosphere in the room, you could just tell that something was off about the day. However, it wasn't like a bad being off, it was good. Everyone just felt so damn excited. So when Aizawa would walk into the room, would then stare down at all of the excited students. Alright, class. Today we are going to a place called the USJ, otherwise known as the Unforeseen Simulation Joint. So, let's go there now. I need all of you to head down into the bus bay. After getting changed into your hero costumes, you'll have 20 minutes to complete this action. You may go. I saw who would say as all of the students would get up, pushing their chairs back into the desk behind them before rushing off down to the locker rooms to get changed as fast as they possibly could. As Zuku getting changed into his just everyday clothes, he would then get into the bus bay since he didn't really take any time to get changed, as everyone else had all these extravagant hero costumes that took over 10 minutes to get into. However, Zuku, this took under a minute for him to do. So as Zuku was sitting on the bus waiting, everyone would slowly end up piling onto the bus as well. As Izuku would be sitting there, the bus would end up traveling out. Tsuyu would end up looking over towards Izuku. Hey, Izuku, I have a question for you. Uh-huh. Oh, sure. What's your question, Sue? Izuku would ask. Oh, I was wondering what your quirk is. Everyone else's quirk in here is just pretty obvious, but yours seems to be kind of just strange. I've seen you regenerate, and then I've seen you show just likes of superhuman strength. It really just doesn't make any sense. Well, whether it's a quirk or just some magical power is one thing, but it still kind of confuses me. The way I got this power also confuses me as well. I remember the day after I got it, I ended up having this just mark on the side of my leg. Zuko would or side or the bottom of his waist, lifting up his shirt, they would end up seeing just a sign of a fox. Huh. That's quite interesting. Maybe it's some type of just drawback of your quirk, maybe? Yeah, maybe. I mean, the entire just situation where I got my quirk was less than a minute, and how I unlocked it was still kind of strange. Everything about it just doesn't make sense to me at all. Oh, well, okay then, she would say, as the ride would then continue on going with no problems. As the bus would slowly roll into the parking lot of the USJ, and all of the students would pile out of the bus, they would then be greeted by the Hero 13. "Good evening, Class 1A! It's nice to see you all," she would proclaim. "Wait, but isn't it good morning?" Oh, doesn't matter right now. A little mistake. So, today we are going to be going into the USJ and learning how to survive in different environments, including how to rescue their people in different environments that you may not be able to handle or your quirk may not be able to handle, hopefully building up a tolerance to things like this. 13 would say as they would then walk up the steps, as she would then push open a couple doors where all of Class 1A students would walk in, marveling at the USJ's beauty and size. They couldn't believe how massive it was. "Whoa, this place is huge! This is amazing!" many of them would say. As all of them would be staring on, Kirishima would then stare down at the fountain. "Oh, look at that! They even have an extravagant fountain here, too. What else about this place isn't massive?" All of a sudden, however, a purple portal or a purple spiral would start spiraling right in front of this fountain. As Kirishima's eye would be caught by it, he would stare closely at this spiral-looking thing. However, the spiral would quickly double and expand in size. As Kirishima would then point towards it, "Wait, do they even have fake villains here too? This place is insane!" He would say. As we now see, I saw 113's head jolt towards where Kirishima's hand was pointing, as they would then see a portal open up as villains would start coming out of the portal. "Kirishima, those aren't fake villains. They're real." "Wait, what?" He would say, completely shocked and confused. As Aizawa would then jump down, going to fight villains. 13, stay here, he would say. As he would be jumping down, however, right before he could even reach the bottom of the steps, a giant purple bird monster would end up jumping out of nowhere, punching Aizawa right across the face. Good, Nomu, a striking voice would say from across the USJ, as the Nomu would then rush back to a blue-haired person that seemed to have some sort of thing for hands, having them all around his body. It was quite weird. Kirogiri, separate the UA students. At once, Kirogiri would create a portal under all of Izuku's classmates, including him, separating them throughout the USJ. Izuku would be falling down through the portal before landing in some water. As he would end up swimming to the surface, he would look around as he would end up seeing a bunch of water and aquatic villains swimming towards him just like a fish. However, Izuku, before anything could happen to him, Izuku would jump out of the water, stepping on one of their heads, propelling them downwards and propelling him forwards, as he would then go up onto a boat. As Izuku now on this boat, he would start looking for any of his other classmates, where he would end up seeing Mineta just in the water. He would end up dangling his staff down as Mineta would end up grabbing it, with Izuku pulling him up. Next, Tsuyu Asui would end up jumping up onto the boat as well. "So, it looks like we're surrounded," Izuku would proclaim. "Yeah, I can't believe you didn't notice that before this, haven't you? Huh?" Izuku would only just rub his forehead like, okay, that kind of didn't make any sense. "So, we need to create a plan. But what should we do? So, why don't we explain some of our powers? Mineta, why don't you go first?" "Oh, well, my power, it's called Pop-Off. I can pop off these grape-like things off of my head. It's a weird power." "And Sue, you?" Zuko would ask, as Tsuyuasui would then explain how she is just all the characteristics of a frog. "Alright, and I am quite strong, I can regenerate, and, it's pretty much all I can think of right now. So, what should we do? What if we move the boat?" Izuku would ask, as they would then look at him wondering, "Wait, what do you mean?" "Hold on, I see something." With Izuku's extensive book knowledge, he would end up having stumbled upon just some sort of sailor's book, so he would end up looking for just the cabin where just the steering wheel, or how to con the boat, or whatever it was, as he would end up finding out where the controls were before he would end up start driving, well, not driving, conning the boat over into just this land, as he would end up running into as many villains as possible, even redirecting himself from land to run into them even more, acting as if it was some sort of video game with a intense smile and grin on his face. However, with how fast Izuku was going, Asui and Mineta would both beg Izuku just to go on land, which Izuku would only say, "Alright, no problem," where he would then ram the boat right into side of the land, where it would then continue going off of the water and right into a ton of the army of villains, crashing through it, splitting it in half. "Oh, hello," Zuko would say, jumping out of the boat. "So, which one of you wants to have their skulls smashed in first?" he would say, cracking his knuckles. As a bunch of villains would step up, Izuku with his staff in hand would then beat down tons of them, kind of like the Madara fight. So, with that, Izuku would just continue on beating down all of these villains. One of them would rush Izuku, and Izuku would just smash his staff into the backside of their head, as Izuku would then dodge under a kick from another, punching them right in the gut, as Izuku would then dodge a punch before grabbing that person's arm, pulling it forward, and punching him right across the face. As with this, the army would be decimated in seconds with how fast Izuku was moving, and along with his staff, it was just so easy. As all of them are now knocked out unconscious, Izuku would be staring face to face with Tomura Shigaraki and the massive bird monster that was the Nomu. "Hello, so I presume you're the leader of this event here. Do you mind explaining it to me why you just happened to bring everyone here? I really want to know," Izuku would ask, as Shigaraki would only stare right on at Izuku. "Oh, you want to know why I have everyone here? Well, what's it to you? It doesn't matter anyway. I just wanted to kill All Might. That stupid shining symbol of peace haunts my dreams every night. I think about how he's still smiling in this world," Shigaraki would say, as Izuku only just sort of awkwardly laugh. Calm down there, no need to get so angry. Don't want to see that bad side of you, I guess. So, what's gonna happen, Zuko would say, before he would end up being punched right across the face by the Nomu. So he would then fly all the way across the USJ, slamming into one of the buildings in the fire zone. As Zuko would get out of that building, just scraping off all of the dust off of his arms and body. Whoa, that was quite the strong hit of yours. This is gonna be a good fight, Zook would say before jumping off, propelling himself right on towards the Nomu, as he would begin a head dive right on, slamming his head right into the Nomu's head, as the Nomu would then recoil back from how hard Izuku had hit him, before punching Izuku across the face and then uppercutting him once more right into the stomach, sending him flying upwards right through the roof of the USJ. This would have caught Toga's eye, as she would end up moving forward close enough as she would see Izuku was in the middle of the fight with just the Nomu. She would end up crying out for Izuku to get out of there and that he wasn't going to survive. Izuku, you gotta go! You're not gonna survive that thing! It's too powerful! She would beg, however Izuku hadn't heard her. However, some people that did were wondering how she knew the Nomu monster was too powerful, and she had a run-in before with it. No, that simply wasn't possible. She couldn't have had just a run-in with the Nomu before, as this was the first time any of them were seeing it. So, why did she know about it? Many of them would say. As Shigaraki, someone who heard her, would end up turning around. Oh, Toga, you happen to show your face here. I can't believe it. Can't believe you actually decided to go to UA like you told me just a couple of weeks ago. So, did you finally find a liking towards heroes or something? Did your ideals change within an instant because you just happened to meet someone you fancy? Oh, who cares anymore, Shigaraki would say. This would make many more people, including Izuku, wondering, why was Shigaraki talking like this? Was Toga some sort of agent or spy or the League of Villains? They didn't know anything. Izuku, hearing this, would end up thinking, well, if Toga's a spy, then I'm gonna get lumped in with that too, since I was the one who requested her to join. Izuku would be thinking that, however, he couldn't linger on that much longer, still in the midst of a fight against this huge, powerful bird monster-looking thing. As Izuku would be fighting it even more, all of the Sun All Mights would end up smashing right through the doors, not smiling for one of the first times ever. As he would then rush towards the Nomu, however, right as he did, he would be punched right across the face by the Umu's arm, sending him flying right out of the USJ right into some trees. As All Might, in a daze, grabbing onto his head. Oh, what the hell? I wasn't expecting to face villains this strong, he would say, holding his head. Izuku's gonna die if he keeps facing that damn thing. I gotta get up. I can't just stay here. My students, they're all gonna die if I just stay here, be weak, and give in. All Might would think to himself, getting up as his body would start to shake, his legs wobbling underneath him, not being able to hold him. After that blow right to the head, All Might had a concussion and wasn't going to be able to continue on fighting without getting any more damage that could have consequences of being permanent. So with that, we cut back to see Izuku continue on fighting before Izuku would end up laughing. This is the most fun I've had in a while. So, Nomu, what do you say to continue this fight for just a little bit longer? After saying this, Izuku would rush towards the Nomu, slamming his fist into its beak, shattering the beak instantly, as all behind the Nomu's head would end up just being destroyed, having a crater lying behind. As Shigaraki would look at Izuku's immense power, before seeing the Nomu start to regenerate even further, as the Nomu would then begin a flurry of punches right onto the chest of Izuku, however, it seemed like it was doing nothing at all. As Izuku, laughing, he would then punch the Nomu in the stomach, causing it to fly upwards a couple of feet, before Izuku would then punch it across the face once, and then twice going the other way. As the Nomu there, having just been punched 3 times so hard that it had never been punched that hard before, would end up screeching out in pain before rushing at Izuku, grabbing him before flipping him over, slamming his head down into the ground. As Izuku would then get up like nothing ever happened, laughing. That's quite the good move of yours. Or he would then grab his staff, twirling it in the air, slamming it into the Nomu's neck, decapitating the Nomu. However, the Nomu's head would then go right back onto its body. So I guess you have sort of regeneration quirk like mine. That's quite interesting. Well, I guess I'll have to give this a try then, Zuko would say, before he would end up staying around just his staff before using Snatch to grab out the Nomu's lungs, causing it to fall down to the ground, as Zuko would drop the massive bird monster-looking lung things. However, the Nomu would end up getting up almost instantly, like nothing had ever happened. It had regenerated just so easily. As Zuko would see this, he would then smile. Now that my theory has been proven correct, I'm gonna have a lot more fun with you, he would say, cracking his fingers for another time, rushing towards the Nomu before punching him right on his right side, completely destroying it. As he would then regenerate, Zuko would punch its left side, destroying it as well. Shigaraki, seeing this, would start scratching his neck violently. How could this be? How could some random kid from nowhere that he hasn't even heard of be able to kill a Nomu? Something that's been designed to defeat All Might even in his prime. This just doesn't make any sense, Shigaraki would think to himself, as the skin would start peeling off of his neck from him scratching it so hard. As Zuko ended up seeing this, not paying attention to the Nomu, he'd be punched right in the neck. As Zuko then jumped backwards, holding his neck in pain. Whoa, calm down there. That's the fastest punch you've punched all day. Where were those punches a minute ago? Zuko would say before diving in head first right back into the fight, slamming both of his fists right into the Nomu's head. We cut back to see Toka, who had started crying, just wanting Izuku to stop, and having her secret just being blown by Shigaraki. However, Izuku just didn't seem to care. He continued on his fight like nothing ever happened. As this would be happening, she would end up just shaking off her tears before rushing off to go help some of her classmates. As the sudden, though, she would end up throwing one of her just blood-sucking devices, as it would then grab a hold of Shigaraki. And with this grabbing hold of Shigaraki, she would then rush in, punching Shigaraki right across the face after turning into him. "Nomu, kill that imposter," she would say in a perfect mimic of Shigaraki's voice, as she would be then pointing right at the real Shigaraki. Almost instantly, the Nomu's head would violently turn right towards the fake Shigaraki before turning towards the real one, as it would then rush towards the real one, punching it right in the stomach before grabbing the real Shigaraki's face and slamming it into the ground, gliding Shigaraki's face into the ground, making him eat the concrete beneath him. As this would be happening, Toga's quirk would then wear off. She would then say, "Oh, oops, you didn't see me," she would say before disappearing into all of the rubble. As the Nomu, after realizing this, would then look down at the real Shigaraki, who had been just beaten half to death already, as Nomu would then drop it before walking backwards. "Whoa, you almost managed to kill your own boss. It's quite a low point for you, isn't it?" he would say as the Nomu turned towards him before Zuko, using Snatch, would then snatch out the Nomu's heart. As without any blood pumping, the Nomu's quirks couldn't work, as the Nomu would then fall down to the ground, just not being able to do anything. "I'll just go ahead and put this right back," Izuku would say, throwing it back right at the Nomu, who, trying to put the heart back in, it would prove useless. As with that, we now see Zuko walking towards the lifeless Nomu body, just wondering, so I guess he did give out. "So, Shigaraki, oh, you're trying to leave," Zuko would say, looking on towards Shigaraki, who was leaving through one of Kurogiri's portals. "Well, since you're leaving so soon, I guess I'll decide to take a souvenir from you," he would say, using his Snatch ability to grab onto Shigaraki's arm, pulling it right off of the socket before yanking it right back to him. "Oh, sweet. I got the whole arm this time," Zuko would say, dropping it right by the Nomu. "Here you go, buddy. You can have this. I'll let you keep it, as just a little keepsake," Zuko would say before rushing off to go help some of his other classmates. As we now see Zuko running around before he would end up finding Ashido badly beaten with a villain standing right over her. You're lucky I don't have an even more powerful strength quirk, or else you'd already be dead, they would say. However, before they could do anything, Zuko would grab the top of their head, slamming it down into the background behind them. Whoa, man, calm down. No need to put this girl at death's door already. You don't even met her. How do you know she deserves to die that so soon, Zuko would ask the villain. However, the villain would shake his head. Oh, so another fake hero wants to join in on getting her crap beaten out of them, he would say before rushing towards Zuko. However, Zuko would dodge their attack. So calm down, man, calm down. You're gonna need to speed up quite a lot if you wish to hit me, Zuko would say before dodging all of the rapid punches of this villain, before Zuko would then grab this villain's neck, pulling it tightly to him. Come on, man. You gotta try harder than that, Zuko would say, picking up the villain completely off the ground and throwing him right into a building behind. As the villain now falling down to the ground, completely unconscious, Zuko would grab Mina, the wounded and unconscious, as he would end up walking, where he would end up finding Kirishima in the midst of a villain attack, whereas Zuko would end up kicking the villain with Mina in hand before handing Mina over to Kirishima. Kirishima, get Mina out of here. She's badly injured. I'll take care of these villains, alright? I'll cover you, Zuko would say, as Kirishima would say, alright, thanks, Zuko, before rushing out of the USJ. As he would then see All Might shakily get up, grabbing onto his phone before calling just UA security and ambulances to get over to the USJ almost immediately. After about a 5-minute wait, the ambulances and police cars would end up pulling up with all of the heroes there. After All Might's just worried call, Nezu had gotten worried and decided to send almost the entire UA staff and security over there. And Nezu's worrying was right, as he sees Izuku beating up many villains right in the front, protecting some of his injured students as Momo was tending to them, creating bandages to wrap around them. As Izuku would be doing this, the heroes would end up jumping in, as Midnight would end up using her quirk to just knock out everybody. However, it strangely just didn't work on Izuku for some odd reason. So with that, we now see Izuku walking back over towards all of the heroes. This was quite an anomaly. I don't understand how this were to happen, Zuko would say. Yeah, I don't understand how they could have broken into the UA. This just doesn't make any sense. We cut forward for 3 hours as we then see Zuko walking into Recovery Girl's office. Knock knock, Zuko would say, knocking his finger to some wood. How you doing, Mina? I'm sorry I couldn't have saved you sooner. I was busy, toying with the bird monster. It sounds hard to believe, but it's true, Zuko would say. Oh, it's fine, Zuko. Don't worry about it. I'm still alive and kicking today, so who really cares? It's not like I have any permanent damage at all. Well, I guess you're right there, Zuko would say, as Kirishima would end up walking in as well. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you, Mina, he would say. Come on, Kirishima. No need to be so rough on yourself. It just wasn't the manly thing to do to let you get hurt like that. Kirishima, stop being so stupid. I told you it's fine. It was my own fault for getting into a fight with such a strong villain after all. So, anyway, who's the arcade? She'd end up laughing, as Recovery Girl would end up poking her head into the room. That's not happening again. I have a couple guards at the door now, so don't think about sneaking out this time, Mina. It was only a joke, Recovery Girl. No need to be so harsh, she would say, rubbing the back of her neck. Well, I gotta get going. I'll see you later, Zuko would say before walking out of the Recovery Girl's office, where he would then see Nezu waiting for him. Zuko, I got a question for you. Look, I know this took quite a while, but you don't have a place to stay, do you? Nezu. You were at my one-room studio apartment No, I don't have a house. It's just a hut made out of mud, leaves, and sticks. So, where are you going with this? You about to brag about how you have this massive school or something? Oh, no. I actually wanted to ask you if you wanted to move into the UA dorms. I know how you don't have any parents and all, so I just decided to ask you just face to face. Oh, that would actually be quite cool. I'd actually have a roof over my head for the first time in 7 years. So you're building UA dorms, huh? I'm guessing it's after the USJ event. Yeah. I don't want anything like that to happen again, so I'm ramping up security. Plus, all of the bad publicity already is killing UA's reputation. So, I gotta do something about it. Yeah, I don't blame you. It is really bad in the media so far today. I saw it on the news. I was walking past the cafeteria on one of the TVs. Well, I guess it's settled then. You move in tomorrow. Wait, hold up, tomorrow? But there's not even buildings, built anywhere. Well, I've already had cement come in and start building all of the buildings. They actually should be ready in 3 hours if you just want to hang around and come in. And just live there, I guess. I'll supply you with some furniture since I know you don't have any, just belongings. Do that, or if you just bring in a mud bed or something. Oh, yeah, sure. That's cool. Well, I'll see you in 3 hours, Izuku would say. As Izuku would end up walking back to his hut where Toga was, where he would end up explaining to her the situation. Wait, really? That's awesome! She would exclaim, fully happy that they were finally going to move into a real house and have a real roof over their head. As Izuku would end up looking through all of his belongings, he would end up grabbing just the massive, just books that he had, many of them that weren't ruined, having Izuku had to bury them after putting them into a stolen box that he had. So with that, Izuku would then grab his most prized possession, his potato alarm clock. As Izuku, holding this in all of its glory, would end up safely moving it over towards UA, moving it so slowly that the 3 hours had already passed. And so when Izuku walked into the UA dorms and he found Nezu sitting there, Nezu would end up looking down at his watch. Izuku, you're 3 hours late. How could you I saw you 6 hours ago. How could you manage to be this late? Oh, my bad, Nezu. I was carrying this, Izuku would say, holding up his alarm clock with a potato, having just all the power from the alarm clock plugged into the potato. It was quite strange. Alright, your room's on the 5th floor on the left. It's room 17A. Izuku would nod his head before walking up to the room, excitedly rushing over there, where he would end up tripping and falling as the potato would end up falling down to the ground, where Toga, who was already there in the hallway, would end up catching it. That almost ended badly, didn't it? As Izuku would end up opening up the room, as he would end up seeing that it was fully furnished, whereas Izuku would end up hopping onto the bed. Oh, this feels so good. Finally able to sleep on a real bed for the first time in years. Well, I guess it's time to go to sleep. Good night, Toga, Izuku would say before just completely collapsing to the bed, falling asleep almost instantly. As we now see Toga jeez, guess he was tired after walking for 6 hours with that damn potato all day. She would sighing. As Izuku would end up getting up early in the morning before staring down Kirishima on one of the UA newly built just gym and training areas. So, Kirishima, let's begin this 1v1. You ready, Kirishima? Izuku would say, facing off against Kirishima, as Kirishima would yell that he's ready as the match would then begin. Kirishima would rush towards Izuku, hardening using his quirk before slamming 2 punches right into the side of Izuku's head. However, this would do little to no damage against Izuku. As this would be happening, Izuku falling back as just a recoil from Kirishima's punches, he would then dodge a kick by Kirishima before punching Kirishima, shattering his hardened quirk after punching him right in the gut. As Kirishima would be sent flying upwards, Izuku would grab his head before slamming him back downwards. As the only reason Kirishima wasn't just super hurt or even dead was because of his hardening quirk. Right after this, Kirishima would tap out saying that the match was over and that there was just little to no chance that he was going to be able to beat Izuku. We cut forward a month in time as Izuku had just been training with Kirishima, causing for Kirishima to jump forward a massive amount in strength, allowing for him to unlock new abilities, while also Izuku unlocking some new abilities as well, learning how to use Fox Hunt and Physical Hunt, just two of Bond's special abilities that he was able to use apart from just Snatch, which was one of the basic abilities Izuku knew from just the first day of having Bond's powers. So we see all of the students walking in to the UA school, where we then end up seeing everyone sitting around just on their desk, as Isawa would end up coming in for saying, "Alright, class, today we're going to be doing the UA Sports Festival. And so, let's begin." He would say, before telling all of them to go down to the bus bay and get onto the bus, as they would then travel to the Sports Festival Coliseum. As he then cut forward to see all of the students on the bus, where it would then slowly arrive before dropping them all off in the Class 1A waiting room. With them all there, they would then go into the changing room, changing before going back into the waiting room, where we then see Kirishima, Toga, Izuku, and Mina all sitting around a table. "I wish all of you luck," Izuku would say, looking on towards all of them, "and as do I, Izuku." So they would handshake each other, just showing a sign of brotherhood or rivalry, basically. So with that, we now see Mina and Toga just talking about what they think is going to win. Toga would say she thinks Izuku's going to win, while Mina would say she thinks Kirishima. As all of the sudden, however, all of them would be told to stand up, as over the intercom, finally a voice would then announce their names. "And now, Class 1A is now entering the UA Sports Festival," Midnight would say from a podium on at the middle of the Coliseum, as all of a sudden these slow, creaky doors would slowly come to an opening, where we then see all of Class 1A walk out, all just showing their pride, as the crowd would then erupt into cheers, cheering them on. So after that, we now see Midnight quieting down the crowd. "Alright, quiet down. Why don't we have the first-year representative come up and give us a speech?" she would say before pointing on for the first-year representative, being Bakugo Katsuki, to come up onto the podium. As he would slowly walk up, he would then blatantly look on towards the entire crowd. "I'm gonna win," he would slowly mutter, as the entire crowd would then erupt into boos or cry from what they had just been doing with cheers. So as all the crowd would be booing, many of the other classes would end up joining it as well, just wondering, "How dare this Class 1A person think he's so much better than us? Let's show those Class 1A brats that the lower UA classes are not much far behind them." Class 1B would also be thinking of this mentality and mindset. So after that, Bakugo would walk back towards Class 1A, where we then see Mina up to him, slamming her fist down onto the top of his head. "What the hell are you thinking, Bakugo? You just got all of the other classes to target us," she would yell at him, however he wouldn't even care. "So, now that that's out of the way, let's begin with the first event," Midnight would proudly exclaim, "and that is going to be a race," she would say before helpers or just volunteers would come in, pushing all of the students into just a small hallway, where all of a sudden they would then hear President Mike yell, "Go!" Right as the words "go" would leave his mouth, all of a sudden these doors would open up as all of the students would end up rushing out. Izuku would end up being trampled, flattened like a pancake from all of the people just rushing in. However, Izuku really didn't care, only stepping up and just brushing all of the dirt off, as he would then just look straight ahead before sprinting off, easily passing through the entire crowd with ease, where he would then end up making it over towards the zero-pointer, as Izuku then looked straight on towards it, winding his fist back, closing his fingers into the palm of his hand. as he would then slam the fist right into the center of the zero-pointer's head with such high velocity and speed that the entire zero-pointer's head would just be blown completely off, being obliterated, vaporized by Izuku's punch, as he would then continue running, not caring about the rest of them, leaving them to Todoroki, Bakugo, Kirishima, and all of the other students that were much far behind him. Izuku would then make it towards the jumping section, and with his insane speed, he would easily be able to hop from rock to rock with ease. As with the minefield, he would do the same. However, every time he would step on a mine, it would just explode him further and further, causing him to step on mines willingly, as it wouldn't really do anything to him, as he would just be propelled right past the finish line, as the crowd would then erupt into cheers once again. And Izuku is the winner! President Mike would yell over the mic as you see Izuku standing in the middle of the sports festival, just raising up his fists in the air, signifying that he was the one that won. We cut back to see Bakugo and Todoroki looking on to see Izuku rushing past them after destroying the zero-pointer. Bakugo, not wanting to be left so far behind, would easily destroy the zero-pointer with a massive explosion, and Todoroki would follow suit, using his ice quirk to easily just capture the villain in ice. Not the villain, the robot. So with that, we then see them just jumping across islands with Todoroki just creating an ice bridge and Bakugo flying over it with his explosions, as they would use the same strategy to end up crossing the minefield. However, before anything else could happen, we see Kirishima step on a mine as he would end up being sent flying forward as he would grab the head of Bakugo, propelling himself even more forward, crossing the finish line, getting second place. Todoroki seeing this and Bakugo being sent back because of the acceleration and just how fast the momentum was of Kirishima, he would be sent flying backwards. As with that, we would then seeing Izuku walk up to Kirishima in the waiting room, congratulating him on second place. Bakugo would come stomping in after getting fourth place, yelling at Kirishima and Izuku how dare they pass him, getting first and second place, as he would then turn towards Todoroki, yelling dare he pass him as well, causing him to get fourth place, not even in the top 3 or a podium finish. How dare they defy him, Bakugo would be thinking, as Izuku would only just laugh. Calm down, Bakugo, Izuku would say. You're letting your anger get to you again. Bakugo would then apologize to Izuku before holding his head. This whole nice thing was still quite confusing towards Izuku. So with that, would then see all of the rest of the Class 1A students who had managed to pass the race or get a passing place end up walking into the waiting room, as after a 10-minute waiting period, they would end up going right back out onto the field. Alright, now that waiting time is up, we may now begin the second event, Midnight would proudly exclaim. And that event is going to be a cavalry battle, she would say. So, the first top 3 people will have the most points, the people behind will have less. So there's going to be these headbands with amounts of points. There's going to be 4 teams having passing with the most points, so try to have the most points. The top headband going to first place has 10 million points, basically giving yourself an automatic victory. So, let's begin, she would end up saying, as Izuku, seeing this, as he would up nodding his head, agreeing with her, as he would then rush around looking for a team, gathering up Mina, Kirishima, and Toga. The friendship was going to last stronger throughout even the second event, as they weren't having to go up against each other until the 1v1 tournament. So, with that, we then end up seeing Izuku crack his knuckles before he would then smile. As the round would begin, all of the teams would turn towards Izuku to see him dangling the 10 million point headband above his head, as he would then wind his back, opening his jaws wide, eating the 10 million point headband in front of everyone. Everyone would look on in surprise and shock. Why would he do that? Many of them would think. as all of them now just being deterred by Izuku just from how weird he was and not having the promise of the 10 million point headband, they would then go after everyone else. And since Izuku not having the 10 point headband, his entire team would just be able to lay around not really doing anything while the 30 minutes would end up passing. And so, as the 30 minutes would pass, Izuku would see that his team wasn't on the leaderboard, where he would then end up walking up to Midnight and asking about it. Hey, how come my team's not on the leaderboard? Well, you destroyed the 10 million point headband, didn't you? That means you don't have any points. Oh, I didn't destroy it, Izuku would say, slamming his fist right into his stomach, completely destroying it before he would end up pulling out the headband. See? It's right here, still intact, Izuku would say. Although it had some holes in it because of Izuku's stomach acid, it really didn't digest at all. As Izuku would be inkling this, Midnight would only facepalm before pointing up to the board, where Onima's team would end up being moved out of the top 4, and Izuku's team would be moved in. What? How could this be? We were supposed to make it, and I was supposed to be the one winning this, to show those damn Class 1A kids who's boss, Noma would be saying. However, Kendo would only walk up to him, slamming her fist right to the top of his head, much like Mina had 2 Bakugo. When will you learn, she would say calmly at him, shaking her head just in frustration. We now see Izuku stretching, as he was told that he was going to be the first match up against Toga, his own teammate. Izuku is smiling, walking up onto the arena as she would be the same. And now, Izuku versus Toga! The round may now begin! President Mike would yell as Midnight would flare her flag, showing that the match had begun, as the crowd would look on, all at the edge of their seats, wondering what was going to happen next. Izuku would rush towards Toga, punching her right across the face. I may have been living with you for quite a little bit now, Toga, but that doesn't mean I'll go easy on you. Also, just because you may be my girlfriend, that doesn't mean anything either, Izuku would say, punching her across the face again, not even letting her have a chance to speak. As she would be flailing around, her body would then slam up against the ground before she would then flip upwards. That's fine, Izuku. No worries, she would then say, opening her eyes once again, staring at Izuku with a devilish glare, rushing at him, slashing him with her hand, grabbing onto his neck. However, this would do nothing at all, as Izuku would only headbutt her, causing her to fall backwards. Gonna have to try harder than that if you wish to beat me, Izuku would say, punching her across the face once again. As your simple tactics aren't going to work on me, Izuku would say, smiling on towards her. As this would be happening, Izuku would end up seeing the crowd all cheering from just the excitement, and Izuku not wanting to torture his girlfriend anymore, as he would be waiting for her to rush him once again, as she would then rush on towards him, sprinting as fast as she could, slashing with her hand, going for a punch, punching him right in the gut, as Izuku would make it look like it hurt him, or you would end up coughing out some of the blood that he had saved in his mouth after puncturing his stomach entirely. As he would end up spitting it out, the entire crowd would look on just in shock. How strong was this girl's punch? Did she have some sort of strength quirk or something? Many of them now completely on the edge of their seats, almost falling off. They would all be staring on, wondering what was going to happen. What was going to happen next? Who was going to win? The anticipation was so high. However, Izuku would only smile, a bloody smile, his teeth stained red, as he would end up punching Toga right across the face with his hand, with his right fist right at his left shoulder. He would end up slashing his right hand right across, as the butt end of his fist would end up hitting her right on the other side of her face, as she would end up falling down to the ground, completely unconscious, having been just knocked out by Izuku. The crowd would roar as President Mike would then excitedly yell that Izuku has just beaten Toga in the first round, and Izuku will be moving on to the second round. As we see Izuku walk back to the waiting room, as Kirishima and Mina would then congratulate him. As we now see Izuku walking up to face off against Todoroki in the second round. Alright, Todoroki, I wish you luck, Izuku would say, cracking his fingers and stretching his neck. As the match would begin, Izuku would rush towards Todoroki, punching him right across the face. Todoroki would only look towards him, slamming his foot on the ground, causing an iceberg to go protruding right out of the ground, right towards Izuku, capturing him just in a layer of ice. As Izuku was in his ice prison, the entire ground would start to shake, as the ice would then shatter into tiny thousands of little ice cubes. As this would be happening, Izuku would rush towards Todoroki, gliding his hand on the ground, grabbing some of the ice, as he would then throw it at Todoroki as if he was mocking him. Todoroki, seeing this, would then look on towards Izuku before rushing towards him, punching him right across the face with Flame Fist. However, this seemed to do nothing at all, as the burn mark and outline of Todoroki's fist would easily heal, just disappearing. Izuku, now looking right on towards Todoroki once again, would headbutt him, much like he did towards Toga, headbutting Todoroki, who would then put both of his fists together, uppercutting him with double fists, as Todoroki's head would be sent flying back, as Izuku would then grab his neck, slamming him down into the ground, before he would start twirling around, still holding on to Todoroki. With Izuku gathering momentum, he would then chuck Todoroki out of the arena. However, Todoroki, using his ice quirk, he would use it to stop himself from hitting the grass, causing him to just be told that he was out of bounds. And since Todoroki saved himself, he would fall down the ice, gliding upon it, before creating just a ramp, causing himself to go flying on towards Izuku. As he would end up making it towards Izuku, he would punch him right across the face before punching him again the other way. However, this did little to no effect on him. As Izuku, in both of his fists together, he would then slam both of them to each side of Todoroki's face. Todoroki would fall to 2 knees. He would yell at himself not to lose like this, as his flame side would then erupt just like a volcano. As fire would start spreading all around the arena, Izuku would jump back, seeing this. "Ah, I see you finally decided to use your fire against me. You finally decided to wise up, didn't you, Todoroki?" Izuku would say, as Todoroki would only stare on towards Izuku, gliding along the ice right up towards Izuku, slashing his hand, causing a wave of fire to go barreling upwards. However, Izuku managed to completely dodge this completely. As Todoroki seeing this, he would end up sending an iceberg right where Izuku had dodged. However, Izuku would dodge this again, merely only dodging it by a tiny little centimeter. As Izuku seeing this, he would end up shattering the ice before grabbing more ice cubes, throwing them right at Todoroki, mocking him even more. This would cause Todoroki to get angrier and angrier before rushing over towards Izuku, slamming both of his feet onto the ground, as an iceberg would then be infused with fire, rushing on towards Izuku. As it would then capture Izuku, as it was far too big for him to dodge. As Izuku feeling this, it wasn't cold at all. It was blistering hot. However, it was just solid, just like ice. It had just the makeup and it was solid like ice. However, it felt and the temperature was just like fire. As Izuku's entire body would start burning, some of his skin even catching on fire. As Izuku feeling this, however, the regeneration would overpower the fire, as he would then slam out of it, using his immense power to destroy the iceberg, as he would then now look over towards Todoroki, as Izuku would just think to himself, "I'm gonna finish this. I've had enough fun with you," Izuku would say, smiling evilly on towards Todoroki. Todoroki, seeing this, would then see Izuku rush on towards him, punching him across the face so fast it would cause his entire momentum just to be sent flying the other way, slamming him into the concrete border, as many of just the fans watching from the stands would end up leaning over to look on at the injured and knocked out Todoroki, as President Mike would then exclaim, "And Izuku has won in the second round against Shoto Todoroki, due to a ring out and knockout victory. He will now be going to the semifinals," he would proudly exclaim, as we now see Mina walking up on towards the first round, as we see Mina was going to be going up head-to-head against Bakugo Katsuki. Mina would be staring on head-on at him as the round would then begin, as Bakugo would rush on towards her using his explosions to propel himself forward, as with such high speeds he would then explode a massive explosion right in the face of Mina. As with this, would then be sent flying backwards as it would land onto the ground, as Bakugo would then grab her face, not letting her react, slamming it down onto the ground, dragging her head on the ground. As she would scream out in pain, the crowd would look on in shock, wondering why was this person just torturing her? It's obvious that he's much stronger and better than her. Why doesn't he just knock her out with ease? He's just torturing her, causing her to feel more pain that she actually needs to feel. However, many of them just didn't understand why he was doing this. As with that, we then see Bakugo now holding her head once more, slam 3 explosions rapidly right to her stomach, as she would then fall down to the ground, landing on her wobbly feet. She would look on towards Bakugo. As her feet would start shaking once again, she would look on towards him, rushing over towards him, not wanting to just give up defeat and announce it so soon. Rushing towards him, she would then slam an acid fist right into the side of his cheek, causing Bakugo to get angrier, as his eyes would then burn an explosion orange as he would stare on towards her, as he would then end up slamming explosion into her chest, causing her to be sent flying upwards, where you then clap both of his fists together, slamming another huge explosion into her, causing her to be sent flying backwards, slamming her down into the ground and concrete beneath him, as Mina would get up, now on both of her knees, not being able to get up on 2 feet. President Mike about to call it, however Aizawa would end up stopping it. Wait, I think she still has a little left in her. I wouldn't call it just yet, at least for pride, that is, Aizawa would say, as President Mike would end up nodding his head. Okay, sure, I'll wait, would say, as we then see Mina get up or slapping some acid down onto the ground, grabbing some of it like it was water. As Bakugo would get closer towards her, she would slam acid right into Bakugo's eyes. As Bakugo feeling this, he would yelp out in pain, holding onto his eyes, as Mina would then get up closer to him, slamming 2 acid fists right into his chest. As Bakugo's eyes would then open, giving off just a red hue, as they were just red from Bakugo rubbing them and the burning acid. As Bakugo would be looking on towards her, he would rush towards her, headbutting her, before punching an explosion right into her jaw, sending her flying upwards once again, where Bakugo, flying upwards, would then slam hundreds of tiny explosions right into her body, causing some of her bones to start cracking and breaking, while her skin would start to burn up from how hot Bakugo's explosions were being, as Bakugo would then wind his fist back, yelling out in full anger, saying that this was his final attack, slamming a massive explosion right into the chest of Mina, sending her flying down onto the ground. And see her fall down to the ground, slamming onto it, as then just fall down, collapsing, not being able to get up at all, as Bakugo would then fall back down onto the mangled body of Mina, walking away, just exclaiming proudly of his victory, as President Mike and Aizawa would just look on in shock. Bakugo had used his complete full strength, showing that, yes, he was just giving some dignity to Mina, not wanting to go easy on her at all, but this most likely could have killed her, and it sure looks like it did, as Recovery Girl would rush out to Mina, having 2 volunteers come out, grabbing onto Mina, putting her onto a stretcher, so they would then rush off to her office. As we now cut forward to see a fight head on, where we end up seeing a purple-haired boy staring on at just a short person that looked unreasonably short. As all of a sudden the match would begin, the person would start to talk, as the tiny person would end up answering. However, before anything could happen, all of a sudden this purple-haired boy would end up getting brainwashed himself before walking out of the arena. As we then now see Kirishima staring on, glaring towards Bakugo, pacing back and forth, as President Mike would then announce that this round was going to be Kirishima versus Bakugo Katsuki. And that this round is just basically the second round, and the winner of this will go on to the semifinals to face off against Izuku. As we see Izuku watching from the stands, as the round would begin, Kirishima, just a focus in his eyes, would rush over towards Bakugo, slamming his hardened fist into Bakugo's chest. So Bakugo would then cough out blood before slamming an explosion into Kirishima. So Kirishima would only glare on towards Bakugo, yelling that he's not going to get away with what he did, as Bakugo only looked towards him. Oh, please, Kirishima. This is only a sports festival. It was just going 100% like Aizawa told us to do. As then Bakugo rushed towards Kirishima, slamming another explosion right into him. However, Kirishima would only look on towards Bakugo, not budging at all, even though he'd felt an immense pain. As Kirishima would grab the head of Bakugo, twisting him around, slamming him down into the concrete. As Bakugo would then get up, flying over towards Kirishima, sending an explosion into him. As he would then create a small circle with his hand, causing an explosion to go right through that circle. With this just impact, an armor-piercing impact would go right towards Kirishima. However, his armor, just core hardening, would hold strong, not breaking one bit, as Kirishima would then go on slamming his jagged hand into the face of Bakugo, causing blood to end up oozing out of some of the holes punctured by Kirishima. Bakugo, not having any of this, would only stare on towards Kirishima. Oh, so you're gonna play that game, huh? Kirishima would be confused but wouldn't care, pressing on towards Bakugo, slamming a fist right in it. Bakugo, as Bakugo would then sending an explosion on towards Kirishima. However, Kirishima wouldn't budge once again. His determination was far too strong for him to give up, so he would be rushing towards Bakugo once again, punching him repeatedly over and over and over again, as the pure hatred that had started to grow in Bakugo since the start of the match against Mina had fully started from a few tiny embers had exploded into a massive bonfire, as Kirishima would be repeatedly punching Bakugo, with this hatred fueling his every move. As this would continue on, Zuko would be watching this, as all of a sudden Kirishima would wind his hand back, punching Bakugo one final time, sending him flying upwards into the air. So Bakugo would use his explosions to go right back down into Kirishima. However, Kirishima would get onto one foot, using a move that Mina had taught him when they were training, kicking Bakugo right in the side of the head, causing him to be sent flying out of bounds, slamming into the wall, much like Todoroki had just by Izuku, as the limp, knocked out body of Bakugo would fall down to the ground. As Kirishima would then be awarded the victory and would be told he was going on to the semi-finals against Izuku Midoriya. Or not Izuku Midoriya, just Izuku. As this would be happening, the semi-finals would begin, as Izuku would be staring on towards Kirishima. As the match would begin, the match wouldn't really move, both of them just standing apart from each other. I'm sorry, Kirishima, about what happened to Mina, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna go any bit easy on you. That's fine, he would say, slamming his fists together, rushing over towards Izuku. However, Izuku would stare on to him, punching him right in the gut, shattering his hardening power instantly, as Kirishima, feeling this, and cough out blood. What the hell? He would say, walking backwards. Where was this power when we were training? You were far too weak to handle it, Kirishima. You most likely would have gotten killed if I did this on the first day. But now you've gotten quite a bit stronger, Zuko would say, flying right on towards Kirishima, slamming a punch right into his gut once again, sending him flying out of bounds, as Izuku would then be told he was going on to the final fight. As we now see Izuku go up to the final right, standing across from a very short person. Hello, Izuku. I know you've gotten Bond's powers, so I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm Meliodas. Hello, Izuku. I know you've received Bond's powers, so I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm Meliodas.
Okay, that's quite the strange entrance, Izuku would say, kind of confused at the small, short, yellow-haired figure just set in front of him. However, the match would then begin without any problems, as Izuku would jump back, waiting for the person now known as Meliodas to begin with their first strike. As this would be happening, Meliodas would rush towards Izuku before punching him right across the face and punching him right in the gut. As would then collapse down to his knees in pain. He had never felt such strong blows before in his life. They were leaps and bounds ahead of anything his classmates or Kirishima had ever been able to do to him before. Izuku would then get up smiling as blood would start flowing out of his mouth. Izuku would then spit it to the side, laughing. This was going to be one of his best fights he's ever had, he would think to himself, as he would rush towards Meliodas, going to punch him, winding back his fist and closing his fingers within it, punching Meliodas right across the face. However, it seemed to do little to nothing to the short, yellow-haired boy standing in front of him. Meliodas would smile up to Izuku, looking up at the huge figure standing in front of him that looked quite similar to Bond. The only difference was Izuku had green hair. As Meliodas would be staring up at him, with Izuku's fist still in his cheek, he would then grab Izuku's wrist, pulling it towards him. As Izuku would start to lose balance, he would flip over, kicking Meliodas right in the head. However, it did nothing. As Meliodas, seeing an open spot, would then kick Izuku as well, lifting up his foot, barely managing to reach Izuku, kicking him right in between the legs. As Izuku would fall down, as he would then jump back, just being like, "Oh, you didn't have to do that." Meliodas, Izuku would say before rushing towards him. Now mad this time. Rushing towards him, he would then throw a punch right across Meliodas' face before punching him right across the gut. Right across the other side of his face as well, before uppercutting him, sending him flying into the air. Izuku would jump up, grabbing onto Meliodas' face, gripping it as tight as he possibly could, before jumping down, slamming his face right down into the ground, as Meliodas' teeth would right there. However, he would get up and they were fine, which kind of confused Izuku, but he just assumed Meliodas had some sort of healing property to him, just like he had. So Izuku would be staring at Meliodas right there. Meliodas would then rush towards Izuku, grabbing onto Izuku's neck, using his magic to slam Izuku down off of where he had stood, slamming him down into the ground as Izuku would then get up. Why don't we continue this just as a fist fight, huh? Maybe then I'll at least have some sort of a chance against you. Izuku would say, glaring towards Meliodas, who would then agree. As Izuku would rush towards him once again, punching him continually. Each punch was harder and faster than the other, with Izuku getting better and better as time went on. As this would keep continuing, more and more air pressure would be sent flying backwards as each punch was landed or blocked. As this would be happening, the inner walls around the Colosseum would start to deteriorate from all the wind blowing and brushing up against them. As this would be happening, Izuku would then be sent flying, slammed down into the ground, as the concrete would flying up, shattering, as Izuku would jump up, jumping from each shattered piece of concrete next, before going right towards Meliodas, punching him across the face. All of the crowd was on the edge of their seats. This was just that amazing of a fight. They couldn't believe it. This fight was truly remarkable. They'd never seen something so crazy like this, not even from an All Might fight against a villain. As the fight would continue ongoing, Meliodas and Izuku would fall down to the ground, clenching their fist to their side, before both saying that they're going to end this once and for all. As they would both rush towards each other, winding their fist back, they would then slam their fist right into each other, as such amount of power was in his punch would just have so much air be sent flowing backwards, and smoke would end up fuming up into the air. Not smoke, just this debris and just dust cloud would form. However, when it dissipated, all that was left was Meliodas standing right in the middle of the shattered arena with his hand smoking, and Izuku embedded into the outer wall, somehow not having gone through it at all, as it was just 10 feet layered of concrete, thanks to Mentos, the hero there, having just made it thicker, having seen how powerful the fight was and seeing how it was deteriorating the wall mid-fight. So with that, Izuku, not being knocked out, would get out before laughing, stretching out his arm, just yelling towards Meliodas. That was quite the good fight I had against you. In fact, it was the best one I've had in years. You'll have to show me all your techniques later, Izuku would say, before Meliodas would only stare at him, saying that it was a secret. As we now jump forward to see Izuku standing on second place, Meliodas in first, and just the person in third. As Izuku just walking by, would end up seeing Kirishima walking down as well. As Izuku would pat his back, just assuring him that Mina was going to be okay. It wasn't going to be that bad of an injury, could it? We cut forward to see Nezu sitting in an office with Aizawa talking to him. So, with the victory of that Class 1C kid showing that amount of power, I don't understand why they didn't try out for the hero course. But who really cares anyway? I'm going to move down Mineta and bring up the Meliodas kid, if that's okay with you, Aizawa. Oh, yes, that should be perfectly fine. After his display of immense power, it's very clear that he really belongs in Class 1A. Yes, I agree with you, Nezu would say, agreeing with Aizawa's statement. As we now see Izuku walking into Class 1A after and the next day of the entire thing. As Izuku would be walking in, he would sit down before staring on everything, before he would end up seeing Meliodas walk in and sit next to him. Yo, he would say towards Izuku. Ah, Meliodas, it appears you found a way to get into Class 1A. Yeah, it was some purple kid that had to be moved down. Oh, that's interesting. I think that kid's name was Mineta. He was quite the nuisance. Thank God he's gone, Izuku would say, as Meliodas, who was just a bit confused, wouldn't really mention it at all. So Aizawa would end up walking into the room after this, as he would be carrying a massive stack of papers, as he would then hand each stack of papers out to each person. This is gonna take too long. So, class, you have the entire day to decide where you want to internship for. You can intern anywhere that has been written down on those papers, as those are the hero agencies that have wanted you to go to their internships. We talked about this a little bit before this, but it doesn't really matter. So, why don't now just begin looking through all of the lists and names, looking at anyone that you might want to pick out. That would be good. As this internship, you're gonna be just training with heroes, trying to get better. So, let's begin. You all have the rest of the day to do this, and if you're not done, you're not gonna be taking an internship at all, and rather be filling out one of those packets behind me. The class would lean over, looking to see what was behind Aizawa, which revealed another huge stack of papers. Many of them would instantly begin flipping through the pages as fast as they could, not wanting to have to do so much of at work. So, as all of this would be happening, we then end up seeing Izuku walk over towards Aizawa, submitting his papers along with Meliodas. Izuku wanting to get just placed so that he could train with Meliodas. Izuku had chosen All Might's agency, which had chosen him along with Meliodas, as it had always done to the first and second place winners of the first year sports festival.
So with that, we see Izuku and them walking on the aisles of All Might's agency, where they would end up seeing All Might laughing down the corridor. It's nice to meet you both. So you two are now going to become my sidekicks for the next week or so. I've deemed you both worthy of these, All Might would say, handing both of them these hero agency or temporary hero licenses. Izuku would look on it before nodding his head, pocketing it, as Meliodas would then do the same. So, let's begin. So, I'm basically going to task you both with going out for the next 2.5 days and try to find and capture as many villains as possible. Then, well, that will actually be the last 2.5 days. The first 2.5 days will actually just be me and both of you going out and just learning the ropes of heroing. Alright? So, why don't we get started? I would say before rushing out the door, as Meliodas and Izuku would be close behind. Meliodas didn't really care much about this. He only really cared about tutoring Izuku. So he was planning on once Izuku and were somewhere private, Meliodas would reveal all of the secrets that were to this world, and would tell him that he needs to train Izuku. So with that, we just seeing him rushing around, fighting villains with All Might as those 2 days would end up expiring. So, we now see Izuku and Meliodas just walking out All Might's agency after being told that they were now free to go and just run around the city looking for as many villains as they possibly could find to try to beat them and to see if they could possibly manage to beat All Might. So, with Izuku's competitive side now activated, Izuku and Meliodas would split up, rushing around the city, looking for as many villains as possible. As Izuku would end up finding tons of them all in one area, which it looked like it was some sort of villain warehouse. Izuku would easily swoop in, knocking all of them out within a flurry of punches, and then easily capturing them all with tons of hero tape, as he would end up calling the police before leaving his mark, saying that he was the hero, just Bon, having taken the name Bon as it was the name of the person that gave Izuku his powers, and Izuku just wanted to show a little bit of respect and remembrance towards it. So with that, Meliodas would also capture tons of these villains while leaving them on a single strand of their life, not really going for the just knockout and capture route, but going towards almost killing them and capture them route. It's still effective, but you're almost killing a ton of people, and that's not really too good. However, on the final half day, Izuku would be rushing around, having had his counter having his and Meliodas' counter at around 999 villains, something that just seemed to be impossible. All Might was close behind at 900, and the hours were slowly ticking away. However, Izuku would end up strolling into an alleyway, looking around. However, as soon as he walked into the alleyway, all of a sudden, a dark presence would end up consuming over Izuku, towering over him. As he would end up looking around before he would end up seeing glowing red eyes staring at him from a distance. Izuku, kind of shocked, wondering what this person's quirk would be, he would take a step back before his foot would end up running into Tenya Ida, one of his classmates, who looked to be very injured, laying right next to him. Izuku, seeing this, his eyes would widen in shock. He would kneel down, looking on towards him. "Ida, are you okay?" Izuku would say in desperation. However, Ida didn't answer. As Izuku would end up standing up, his now eyes looking cold and ruthless, he would stare on this person standing in front of him, who would then step into the light, revealing themselves as a hero killer. However, right as they did that, all of the bloodlust had instantly just been gone, as Izuku would rush towards the hero killer, punching him right across the face. So the hero killer would be sent flying backwards, slamming into a dumpster behind, having his head slammed back, as the hero killer's head would start spinning from how hard he hit to the dumpster behind him. He would end up hopping up, looking towards Izuku. However, Izuku was far too fast, rushing towards him, punching him right across the face. As the hero killer would then get out his sword, rushing towards Izuku, slashing on right towards him. However, Izuku had dodged this slash. As this would be happening, Stain would end up rushing towards Izuku once again, slashing at him even faster, as Stain's sword would then end up catching on to Izuku's neck, as Stain would put all of his force into slashing right through it. Right as Stain's sword was about to hit Izuku, Izuku would quickly duck under it before sweeping Stain's legs, causing him to fall over. As Stain was falling over, Izuku would jump up, grabbing Stain's face, and slam it down into the ground. With such quick and fast movements, this would knock Stain out completely unconscious. Izuku would look over behind him as he would see the quickly fading life of Ida. As he would rush over to him, Izuku would pull out some bandages supplied to him by All Might and would start to patch up Ida's wounds before he would end up calling the police. As police and ambulances would end up arriving, the ambulances would take Ida away, while Izuku would then give his statement while also showing them his temporary hero license, showing that he is a sidekick of All Might. The police would look intently at Izuku's license before looking back up at him again. I'm quite surprised. All Might hasn't had a sidekick in years. So, what made you get the sidekick role with him? Oh, I'm working as an internship with UA. Oh, he just offered me to be a sidekick as the internship with him for a week. Alright, that makes sense. I heard about UA's internships. Well, you can go now. Run along, kid, the police officer would say, letting Izuku go, as if not caring that Izuku's friend had just basically almost been put to death by some random villain. As Izuku would be walking away, his thoughts would start to drift off, wondering what would have happened if he was just a little bit sooner. Was Ida going to die, or was he just still alive? Izuku didn't know, but he was hoping that his efforts to patch up his wounds had basically saved his life. As Izuku thinking thought, well, if Ida hadn't been patched up, he possibly could have died. However, Izuku wouldn't let this get the best of him, getting back to the dorms and falling asleep. As the next day, Izuku and Kirishima would be called down towards Recovery Girl's office. As both of them would end up walking in, Mina would end up staring at them as she was sitting down on Recovery Girl's bed. She had remained injured for the longest time, and they just didn't know what was wrong with her. As they would end up coming in, Recovery Girl would look down just with a gloom expression on her face, just leading them to Mina saying that they were her two closest friends. I'm sorry, Kirishima and Izuku, Mina would struggly say, not barely being able to get it out of her mouth. I feel like I failed you. What do you mean, Mina? I don't understand this. Why are you acting this way? Kirishima would ask, kind of confused, wondering what was wrong with his girlfriend at this point now. Izuku would look on at her before something would go off in his head, as Izuku would end up realizing what was wrong with her. I can't be a hero anymore. What? What do you mean? What do you mean you can't be a hero? My quirk, it doesn't work the same way as it used to. After the fight with Bakugo, my quirk, my body, it's just not as strong as it once was. Are you saying Bakugo caused permanent damage to you? Well, in a way, yes. I can't use my quirk to its fullest extent anymore. And if so, my hands will start to hurt violently for days. I don't know what to do anymore. It's funny, looking back on it now. Oh, I wanted to be a hero so bad, and now I can't. It's just so hard to believe. This can't be. We were supposed to be heroes together. The best
crime-fighting duo the world has ever seen. I should have stopped that fight. I should have stopped the fight as soon as I knew something bad was gonna happen. It's okay, Kirishima. Stop being so down on yourself. While Kirishima and Mina were talking to each other, Izuku couldn't help but only stare on at them. One of his best friends had now been forced to drop out of UA just because of a stupid attack just by Bakugo during the sports festival, and Bakugo couldn't get punished for this. Sure, he was going way too hard on her. She wasn't just capable of deal with just the highest 100% of Bakugo, but still, should he have gone 100% on her? No. And now Bakugo will get off scot-free, injuring one of the students. Just a point that they're not going to be able to be a hero anymore, not going to be able to use their quirk anymore to an extent. Izuku all just couldn't believe it. As Kirishima and Mina would continue talking, Izuku would walk up to Kirishima, patting him on the shoulder. Look, I'll let you two be. This isn't the time for me to be here, Izuku would say, walking out, as Mina would only stare at him. So would Kirishima. As Kirishima would continue talking away, Izuku would go up to meet with Toga, who was doing a training session with her internship. As Izuku would end up making it back to the dorms, Toga, who had just finished her internship on the last day, as she had been sick the first day and gotten an extra day, they would then meet up in the dorms. Look, Toga, how do I say this? You're not going to be seeing Mina in this building anymore. What do you mean, Izuku? Toga would ask, confused, wondering, and leaning in intently towards Izuku, wondering what he was talking about. Her fight with Bakugo. You know how she got insanely injured. It's just... she can't, or barely can use her quirk anymore. She just can't be a hero anymore. You're kidding, right? That just doesn't make any sense. Toga, lost for words, just couldn't talk. However, she would end up closing her eyes before they would end up flying open with a fury. Where's Bakugo? She would angrily ask Izuku. I'd say probably in his dorm room right now. Why? Don't do anything stupid that could get you expelled, Toga. I just want to have a talk with him. That's all. Toga would say. However, Izuku knew what the real reason was. However, he wouldn't really care, just patting her on the back as she would be pushed forward towards Bakugo's dorm room, as she would then fly down the halls looking for it. As she would then knock on Bakugo's dorm room, we cut to see Izuku walking with his new classmate, Meliodas. So, Meliodas, what brought you here again? So, I wanted to teach you all of the techniques that Bon had, the person that gave you your powers. However, I'd also like to tell you how me and him got to this world. It's quite the long story. Oh, I'm sure it is, Izuku would say, as he would then sit down under a tree, as Meliodas would sit down under it as well. So, it starts off, me and him were training, just out in the field, practicing against each other, sparring, when all of a sudden a strange purple portal opened up, as he would end up stopping the fight to go look at it. As all of a sudden he would end up just asking me to come towards it, and so I obliged, walking towards it, when all of a sudden he would race towards me, grabbing me, holding me down before he would push me through the portal, as he would then jump in as well. As we would then fall into a strange, mysterious forest, as we would look back towards where the portal was that we had fallen out of, to only see that it had closed in behind us. So that's pretty much how we got stuck here. That wasn't a very long story, but it's quite the interesting one. I guess it might be a sore topic for you. It kind of is, you know. I had family back there, but
You know, in a few thousand years, you get over stuff like that. A few thousand years? Wait, what do you mean? Oh, I'll tell you later. It doesn't really matter that much. All of a sudden, we would end up cutting forward to see Izuku, Kirishima, and Toga all sitting on a bus. Mina had been allowed to come with them, just there to just guide them along, as she wasn't basically expelled from UA or just dropping out of it like many of them thought. She could still remain in UA, but she had to consider one of the other classes, mostly being one of the general classes. As she would end up taking one of those, would end up struggling intently or struggling a lot, as really what was holding her in Class 1A was her quirk and how strong it was, and how much she was just smart in hero techniques. However, without that, she wasn't very smart book-wise, and so she would struggle with the normal classes, having her quirk holding her in such of a high hero status. So with her coming along, all of them would end up getting out of the bus at a massive summer training camp, resort-looking thing, as 4 heroes dressed up as cats would all come out of nowhere, as would then end up introducing themselves as the Wild Wild Pussycats, as they would then start to explain to everyone that they are going just to be teaching them how to properly train themselves, and they're just going to be training them as hard as they possibly could, as this next couple of days were going to be as hard as possible, as they have finals in just about a week, and this is a sort of training measure so that they can get prepared for it. So as all of them would begin stretching, almost immediately after their stretching was done, they would begin a massive 5-mile run, which many of them, not being in the best of shape cardio-wise, would barely be able to complete it just by walking alone. However, they would be forced to keep on running, with Aizawa following behind them at a slow pace, and if you were to just get caught behind Aizawa and he to capture you, then that would mean you would have to take summer school for the rest of the year, and none of them wanted to have to do that, so they would all continue on running, making sure that they were not going to just get captured by Aizawa. As the running would ending, they would then begin with the specialized quirk training, with them splitting off into groups, some of them going into sparring groups. However, these sparring groups would be just withheld to only the strongest of people in the class, mostly just being Kirishima, Izuku, Todoroki, and Bakugo, just being asked if they could spar with each other, as they were the 3 strongest, and that they would just blow out everyone else in the class. So with everyone just doing these special quirk training exercises, Izuku would start to think what type of exercise he could do, just dropping down to the floor, starting to do just as much push-ups as he possibly could, not really knowing else he could manage with the staff that he had with him that he had brought. A simple 3 just typed staff with 3 sections, all being connected by chains. As Izuku would continue on his training, as finally this training would end up coming to an end for the day, where they would then be directed to a massive building, with each of them being assigned a room number, which it was mostly just like the dorms. They were assigned just a curfew where they would have to get to bed by 10, and they had 2 hours to go around either eating or just relaxing, and they could do whatever they chose. So with doing that, many of them would run around wondering what they could do, and this is where Mina would end up just coming out after going inside for a few hours after dinner. Since dinner was at 6 and everyone else who had finished had to go back outside for training, she decided to go back inside to rest up, as she really just wasn't training. Oh, she was just there. As one of the cats would also be there just helping Mina with some physical therapy to hopefully get her quirk just back in check at least a little bit. There was still a small hope that her quirk could one day get back to the level that it was. However, this hope was very small, and many of them just weren't sure if anything ever would happen like that. We see all of the students sitting in just the hot tubs or hot springs, where all of this and Mineta, who had been allowed back into Class 1A since just Mina wasn't going to be able to be in Class 1A anymore, Mineta was able to move back up again. So Mineta being back in Class 1A, once again, he would end up doing the same thing he did in Canon My Hero Academia, trying to climb over the wall, where Kirishima, seeing this, would activate just the fury in his eyes, where he would jump up, grabbing Mineta by the back of his head, right on one of the sticky balls, or the grape things on the back of his head. Grabbing it, it would stick to Kirishima's hand, as Kirishima would then flip down, trying to throw Mineta down, which would only cause him to go faster down to the ground, where Mineta's head would then be slammed headfirst, right down into the concrete beneath of them. After Mineta's head hit the ground, all of a sudden a loud bang would be heard, as teachers would flood into the hot springs, while just Aizawa, he would look on and wonder what was happening. What was that loud bang? He would question all of them, as they would just only point towards Kirishima with his hand stuck on Mineta's head. As Aizawa would look over towards Kirishima, asking for an explanation, to which Kirishima would oblige, saying that Mineta over there tried to climb the wall of the hot spring to see the other girls. As Aizawa would only look over towards Mineta, or just asking him if this was true. Mineta, just being speechless, was like, maybe? He would mutter out, as Aizawa would only give him a blatant look before asking him to come with me. Mineta would race towards Aizawa after putting some clothes on, as they would then turn the corner, as Aizawa would only look on towards him. For the time being, you're expelled from UA. I'll let you find a way to get back to your house. I'll give you 30 minutes to get off this property, or else you'll be escorted out by the security and be thrown into jail for the night. So, I'd get to it, Aizawa would say, just being pissed off and having enough of Mineta's crap that he's just been doing for the entire school year. Finally just saying, fine, I'll just expel him from this damn school. So, with that, we then end up seeing the next day go out basically just the exact same. Mina being there to help everyone out just by giving them suggestions on what they could possibly be doing for their quirks and training. However, during the night, all of them decided to play a game that they could play with Mina, and this game happened to be a hide-and-go-seek kind of scare-style game. Half of them would be the seekers, and half of them would be the hiders, where the hiders aren't actually hiding, they're walking around trying to not get scared by the seekers or people that are trying to scare them. So, if this... the night would end up going on for many, many hours, with all of them just running around, scaring each and every one of them. However, before the night could truly end, all of a sudden, a smoky just smell could be smelled throughout the air. It smelled like someone was having a massive bonfire. As many people would look up to the sky, wondering what that smell was, they would all of a sudden see a massive cloud of smoke burning through the air, rustling right on towards them. Many of them would look on closely towards it before they would end up seeing a blue glow emanating from the tree line. Izuku would end up jumping in the air to see what this was. However, he would end up seeing that the forest was on fire with a bright blue fire. Izuku would rush over, telling the teachers that the forest was on fire and that this wasn't just any ordinary fire. This was a villain's attack. Aizawa would look firmly towards Izuku, asking him if he was sure, which Izuku would nod his head. Alright, we need to find the students quickly, Aizawa would say, completely confident in Izuku's ability to tell if this was a villain attack or not. As Aizawa would end up racing off, looking throughout the forest for all of the students. Izuku would do the same. As all of a sudden, Izuku rushing through the forest, he would turn a corner before bumping into a black-haired villain with stitches all around his face. What the hell? The villain would mutter, turning around to see Izuku staring up at him. Oh, if it isn't one of those damn heroes in training, he would say, lifting his hand up into the air, trying to burn Izuku. However, Izuku would only dodge this attack before punching the villain right in the chest. As the villain would be sent flying backwards, would end up hitting a tree before you would looking on, as you would see two people end up turning a corner, where you would end up grabbing the pink-haired girl that turned the corner, holding her into a headlock. As you'd be holding her, Mina would be looking on towards Kirishima with pleading eyes, yelling for him to please save her. However, he could do nothing, as he was holding her hostage, making sure that Kirishima didn't take another step forward. With Kirishima not able to do anything, another villain would appear out of nowhere, wearing a mask covering their face, with Bakugo in hand, having knocked him out. As the sun, a portal would open up right there between them, as Izuku would end up feeling a sharp pain in his neck, along with Kirishima, as they would both fall down, right as Izuku was about to stop both of those villains from getting away, with Bakugo and Mina getting away into the portal. As Izuku would end up waking up with this sharp pain in his neck just finally gone, he would end up waking up with Toga staring down at him. Izuku, are you alright? She would ask. Yeah, I'm fine. Did you happen to see what that thing was that caught both me and Kirishima's neck by any chance? It looked like some type of syringe-looking thing. Oh, no. It's kind of strange you ask me that. I did see something like that flying around, dangling in the air, but that's about it. I see. They got Mina and Bakugo. They did? Wait, so they were trying to capture them? Well, that doesn't make any sense. Mina can't use her quirk. I mean, it kind of makes sense why they'd try to capture Bakugo, but... what? Izuku would lift up the still unconscious body of Kirishima before they would end up walking back towards where Aizawa and the rest of the students were. As Aizawa would end up just explaining that they would be taken back to the UA dorms right now, and that it just had to end. As Izuku and Kirishima, having just woken up, would ask what about Mina and Bakugo? They had been captured by villains. Well, they couldn't do anything for now, they just had to find where the villains were. And so Izuku, having held on to that license, looking down at the temporary license, would know what he was going to do. As Izuku would up getting onto the bus, where they would then travel back towards the UA dorms, where it would finally end up just making it back there, where all of the other students would end up going to bed. Meliodas, who was strangely absent from this whole ordeal, saying that he had to attend business the entire time, would end up just meeting all of them up at the UA dorms and asking them why they were back so early. Izuku would end up telling Meliodas why before explaining what he wanted to do. However, he wanted to bring someone other than him along, and if he could have his temporary hero license. Meliodas would say sure before handing it to Izuku. These temporary hero licenses weren't just specialized to anyone at all, basically just saying the hero that wields this has the ability to temporarily use their quirk in battle from the dates of this to this. All Might, who was dumb enough, didn't check the dates, as Izuku's temporary hero license expired in just over a year. So with that, Izuku would end up giving it to Kirishima before looking him dead in the eyes, just saying, "Look, let's go get Mina," Izuku would say, not caring what happened to Bakugo. We cut over towards the League of Villains hideout, where they would be seen just asking Bakugo if he could join the League of Villains. Bakugo would go on towards them before just yelling, "No, I'll never join you villain scum. That's quite interesting. I happen to get word from the media that you had to give permanent damage to your friend Mina over there, the alien-looking thing. Yeah, did you know you gave her permanent damage to her quirk? She can't even use it anymore." Shigaraki would say as Bakugo would only stare towards her. "Well, it's her fault for being weak," he would say.
First, Shigaraki would only laugh before walking towards Mina. Well, I really don't care, as Shigaraki would place all 5 of his fingers on top of Mina's head, as he would then take Mina's cork away from her. However, it really didn't work. Well, sort of. It took her acid cork from her. However, the physical properties of her cork weren't taken away. She was still pink and had pink hair. So, it would end up as... And Shigaraki look at it before wondering, so I guess I got the acid part of your cork, but not your physical abilities. That's honestly quite interesting. I'll have to ask All For One about this. He'll probably know. But that's aside the point from right now. So, Bakugo, yes or no? I'll answer. I already told you, damn it, no! Would say. However, right as Bakugo would utter those final words, both Izuku and Kirishima would smash in towards the League of Villains hideout, as Momo, who had overheard their plan, gave them a tracking device that she had luckily placed on one of the villains. Mina, Kirishima would say, looking around the room before finding Mina on a chair, as he would swiftly break her restraints before picking her up. Quickly, Kirishima, get out of here! I'll take care of these damn villains. Izuku would say as Kirishima would nod his head, jumping out of there, carrying knocked out Mina. She had gotten knocked out from the intense pain it had caused her from having her cork taken away from her. With Mina now longer on the scene, Izuku would start to power up before racing towards Dabi, knocking him out before knocking the rest of the villains out, saving the strongest villain for last, Shigaraki. It appears we finally meet again, Izuku. I've gotten a lot more research done on you, and I somehow found out that you're corkless. That doesn't quite explain how you're so strong. However, I don't really care enough to ask you any questions about it. So, why don't we begin this fight? Let's begin. Shigaraki would say, racing towards Izuku, punching him right across the face, sending him flying backwards. Shigaraki had started to stockpile strength corks, causing him to get insanely strong, having just so many of them. As Izuku being sent flying back into a building, hitting the building, would jump out of the rubble before racing on towards Shigaraki once again, punching him in the face before punching him again, causing him to stay in the same place. As Izuku would then grab Shigaraki's head, twisting him before throwing him down to the ground. As Izuku would then point his foot downwards, flying down to the ground, slamming his foot right into Shigaraki's stomach. Shigaraki would then cough out blood. He would start to power up even further. As he would stare towards Izuku, flying towards him, he would punch Izuku right in the chin. As Izuku would hear a crunch breaking his jaw, however, it would easily regenerate with ease. Seeing how strong Shigaraki truly was, he would start to go as far as he possibly could. Well, not as far as he did against Meliodas. Shigaraki was still far too weak for Izuku to manage that. However, Izuku knew if Shigaraki ever endangered anyone's lives, he'd yield from just using as much power as he could, making it look like he was just bound to lose. So with this, Izuku would continue on the offense, punching Shigaraki farther and farther back, as Shigaraki would start to feel that he was getting weaker and weaker. Sensing that his defeat was imminent, Shigaraki would look back toward wherever the bar and villain hideout was, where he would end up seeing Toga standing there watching the fight, as he would race down towards Toga, grabbing her in a headlock, much how Dabi did to Mina. Izuku would stare towards Toga. How did you get here? He would say, it's not what it looks like, Izuku. She would mutter out, choking it out, barely being able to speak, having been choked by Shigaraki. Just as a little added bonus, I'll take away one of these, Shigaraki would say, snapping Toga's arm off. There, that's a little revenge for punching me so hard just a couple of seconds ago. And how about this one, too? Shigaraki grabs the other arm of Toga before snapping it off of the hinges, before pulling it completely off of her body. And that will be revenge for the arm you took from me in the USJ, Shigaraki would mutter under his breath, as Izuku would now stare at Shigaraki, although the emotion of anger was oddly absent from Izuku. Izuku didn't feel any resentment or anger towards Shigaraki at all. Izuku honestly didn't care that much for Toga, as she had only been in his life for 6 months or so. Izuku had been on the street. He knows what it feels like to lose someone he loves. He's lost his own mother, of course. And so seeing Toga's arms be snatched away from her within just a couple of seconds, it didn't hurt Izuku at all. Whether this was because of Izuku's emotions already being partly locked away by the loss of his mother, or Izuku just being oddly insane in a way. Izuku would continue on staring as Shigaraki would start to get even more angry, not seeing a reaction out of Izuku. "I can't believe you're the boyfriend of this trash," Shigaraki would say, kicking Toga down to the ground, kicking her with an imprint of his boot on Toga's back. As Toga would fall down into the ground into some of the rubble, scraping herself on some of the cinder blocks that have just been destroyed by all of the buildings falling down from Izuku and Shigaraki's fight. Izuku would jump down to Shigaraki before staring at him eye to eye, as Shigaraki would do the same, kind of looking up towards the tall teen. Izuku would continue staring on towards Shigaraki before Shigaraki would make his move, rushing towards Izuku, as Izuku would dodge this. However, Shigaraki had gotten an idea right in the spur of the moment, grabbing on to Toga, as 2 of his fingers would go right in to the forehead of Toga, as if she was just completely not there, as his entire hand would go right through Toga, or Shigaraki would end up plunging his hand out of her, holding it as purplish flames would be flowing endlessly off of it. Izuku would look at Shigaraki, wondering, what did he do to Toga? He was quite confused what had just happened. As Izuku would end up looking towards the girl, all of a sudden she would end up standing up with cold eyes, as Shigaraki would smile. "Good. Toga, regenerate your arms, will you?" Toga instantly would regenerate her arms before she would end up staring at Shigaraki, wondering what was her next move to be, as Shigaraki would then end up laughing. "Good. Now go kill that damn Izuku, will you?" Toga instantly recognizing the name, her head would bolt towards Izuku before her legs would jump off right on towards Izuku, jumping at him with her arms out as claws would end up growing out of the girl's fingers. As these claws would end up growing, she would scratch right towards Izuku, trying to hit him. However, Izuku would dodge this before staring at her, looking on towards the monster she was becoming, as her clawed hands would end up grabbing down towards her waist, pulling out a knife, before she would rush towards Izuku, slashing at him, as each slash and cut she would make, it would cut right through Izuku's skin, but it would easily heal, leaving no scar behind. As Izuku would be watching this, he would continue dodging each and every single one of Toga's attacks, not having the heart to kill her. Izuku didn't care if she got hurt, but he didn't want to be the one who would inflict that pain onto her. He just had something in his brain holding him back, which Izuku just didn't know why. If he was willing not to go and save her if she was being hurt, why couldn't he do that pain to her? It was like he was doing it to her because he wasn't going to save her. So what's this thing holding him back from killing her? Izuku just didn't know. Why was he not able to do this? Finally, Toga would end up slashing on towards Izuku's heart, sticking the knife right into it. However, Izuku this time would grab her knife right as she reached for it before throwing it to the side, pushing Toga back right after he did so. "That's enough," Izuku would say, taking a breath beforehand. I don't need to fight you any longer. Zuko would say, going towards the back of her neck, knocking her out unconscious. However, before Zuko could swoop in, grabbing her, Shigaraki would come in. As we cut back a few seconds where Zuko throws the knife, Shigaraki catches it, seeing Zuko knock Toga out. He would then teleport right to Toga with the knife up to her throat before completely slitting it, as blood would fly out of it, as Zuko would watch, as his eyes would end up flowing, losing all of the color, much like hers, seeing his basically one and only friend besides Kirishima and Mina just have her life completely taken away from her. As her eyes go completely colorless, just completely white, she was dead. As her limp body would fall down to the ground, Izuku would watch this, emotionless, much like Toga had just been. Izuku would turn towards Shigaraki before staring at him, wondering what should he do. He was conflicted. He was confused. What am I going to do now? Shigaraki would smile, staring up at the emotionless teen. That's just the emotion and thing I wanted to see from you. Your reaction tells it all. You're in shock, and maybe soon enough you'll go into denial. Well, that'd be in a perfect world after all. But I honestly don't care. Either way, you're gonna end up dead, Shigaraki would say, rushing towards Izuku, grabbing out his hand, turning in his entire arm into a massive purple flame-looking thing, plunging it right into Izuku's stomach. However, Izuku would smile as blood would stain his white teeth, staining it a bloody red, as his smile would stare towards Izuku. His stared on towards Shigaraki, smiling in the process. Shigaraki would look up at this smile, as his entire eyes would just be fixated on it. He couldn't look away. It just uttered the entire thing of death. It was as if death was calling his name after he saw those teeth. As soon as he retracted his arm, Izuku's stomach would instantly heal, before Izuku would knee Shigaraki right in the stomach, right in the same spot Shigaraki had just had his hand, as Izuku would then wrap his arm completely around his body before punching Shigaraki right through his stomach, grabbing out one of Shigaraki's intestines, pulling it out completely, as Shigaraki would end up falling down to the ground as his slow hyper-regeneration quirk that was nothing compared to Izuku's regeneration immortality power, as Shigaraki falling down to his knees, holding onto his spilling guts as they would fall out of his chest. He would hold on to them, coughing out, before Izuku would grab his head. I suppose I end you of this misery. Or maybe not, Izuku would say, twisting his hand, grabbing onto Shigaraki's throat, and cutting out just the thing that allowed Shigaraki to breathe, as he lay there suffocating to death, not able to use the regeneration quirk that's main or was based off of breathing. Without breathing, he couldn't regenerate, so he was just left there to die, as Izuku would end up staring on towards him before kicking his body over towards the remains of Toga, as if just a gesture to look on to what he had done, and he's now gonna end up in the same place she was, dead. As Izuku ended up seeing this, he would end up walking away with no one stopping him. All of the police that had surrounded the area would just allow him to go free. Many of them had knew just the heart of losing one of their friends in battle or combat, and although they wanted to arrest him, they had just seen that he had just stopped one of the most powerful villains they'd ever managed to lay his eyes on. Izuku would be walking back, however he would be thinking, Shigaraki never managed to tell me what happened to All for One. Or did he? I can't remember. Is All for One dead? Nah, who cares? It's not like it matters anyway. Izuku would continue on walking, making it back to the UA dorms, where he would end up being met by all of his classmates. They would greet him, however, they had been watching the news and they had seen what had happened.
Izuku and Toga was gone. They were gonna save him. Kirishima had rushed back to the dorms after saving Mina. And so they just were watching the TV closely, seeing how one of their fellow classmates had died, Toga. However, as Izuku would end up falling, collapsing into his bed, completely exhausted, the empty bed would sort of haunt Izuku's dreams. However, when he awoke, all of that feeling and caring that he had felt after the defeat of Shigaraki had just left his body. It was just like his life was playing all over again. Someone he cares about just has to die. It's, of course, Izuku would open his door and be met by a short, blonde-haired fellow. Hello, Izuku. Look, I'm sorry you had to deal with that. I know the pain of having to lose someone you love, but Izuku would stop Meliodas right in his tracks. Look, Meliodas, it's fine. Honestly, I don't really care. Meliodas would stare up at the emotionless person before just shaking his head, just dropping the entire thing. Alright, Izuku. Okay. So, I guess it's time to go to UA, right? How long have you been here again? Maybe a couple weeks, right? You know when UA starts, don't you? You've been in UA, not in the hero course, for a couple months, haven't you? Oh, yeah, right. I kinda lost track of time, being up so late after watching the TV and, Yeah, I get it, Izuku would mutter before walking downstairs, cooking up some eggs before sitting down watching the TV, where he would end up seeing the news just about an article about the former UA student, Toga, how she was apparently among the League of Villains. Izuku would look on intently as he would end up seeing that one of the villains who had gotten captured had decided to rat out all of the other villains, which included the dead Toga. Izuku, while he was eating, he would sort of clench his fist, but not as strong as someone who was insanely mad would do, just wondering why couldn't they just let her sit and rest in peace, not tarnishing her reputation. Who cares if she was a villain? She's dead now. She's not going to be killing anyone else, Izuku would say. However, after a couple seconds, all of the anger would diminish. Izuku was in kind of a phase of regret and emotion, like her death could have been preventable. However, Izuku just was having the feeling of not caring, and so he didn't. It was all just a strange feeling, and it was kind of like he was sort of a bit depressed, but not exactly. So as the TV would continue going, saying how Toga was a part of the League of Villains before being killed by the former leader, who has since been killed or is labeled as deceased as of this moment, because of a young UA student who just happens to have a temporary hero license, our young Izuku. As this TV would continue ongoing, Izuku would just decide to not care, rather getting up and walking away, putting his plate in the sink before going up towards his dorm, putting on clothes before walking out towards the campus. As Izuku would end up sitting down, Nezu would end up walking into the room once the bell would end up ringing. I'm sorry all of you have to feel this pain, having to lose another one of your classmates after Mina had to leave since she couldn't be a hero anymore. Although I deeply regret and say that I'm sorry that Toga just had to die last night. If we were there stopping her from leaving, if we were there, we probably could have saved her. Nezu would go on. However, Izuku just didn't bother. Once again, just as his brain would end up tuning out Nezu, Izuku was just in some sort of emotion or something. As Izuku would end up listening on, as Aizawa would end up walking in. Now that that's out of the way, let's begin with the final exams.
Alright, class, let's begin the final exams, Aizawa would say, before leading them down to the locker rooms where they would then get changed into their hero costumes. Once they were in their hero costumes, they would follow Aizawa all throughout the UA campus until they finally reached this huge complex where on a billboard, just right in the smack dab middle of it, would read Final Exam Complex. As Izuku would be reading this, he would then be handed a card that told him what listing he was going to be in. He was in the last fight, which he just happened to be all by himself in this fight. Mineta hadn't been moved up just yet into Class 1A, so he was still hasn't taken the final exams yet and wasn't going to, as he was going to be taking the final exams with just the regular classes that he was in. So with him taking those, there was an odd number of kids, meaning Izuku was going to be in against All Might by himself. So since he was by himself, he was going to be versing All Might by himself with no one there to help him, and so with that basically being the final battle, Izuku was going to be last. And since Izuku has basically already proven himself time and time again, being an All Might sidekick and stopping hundreds of villains, and even stopping one of the world's most threatening villains. Sure, he did get a smack on the wrist for killing Shigaraki, but that wasn't before Shigaraki had beaten him a ton, and it basically looked like Izuku had no choice. As you could plain as day see, Izuku was holding back, and he wasn't going to be able to beat him with him holding back so much. So with him holding back, he couldn't beat him, and so he had to go all out, which would end up causing the death of Shigaraki. So as all the rest of Izuku's classmates would end up going, including Meliodas, as they would all end up passing, as with just the training and not wanting to fail their fallen classmate Toga and Mina, they all fought through their teachers, easily sweeping through them with no losses, which then left Izuku versus All Might. Many of them thought that their streak was over, as Izuku just had no chance at beating All Might. However, that was because they were strikingly just not comparing or giving Izuku the credit he deserved. Sure, they saw someone that was so strong kill Toga, one of their strongest classmates even, and Izuku was easily able to beat him. However, they thought All Might was just far leagues above it, and if All Might was there, All Might would have just easily stopped him. However, since All Might wasn't there, and Izuku was struggling, they still thought Izuku was comparably weaker than the likes of All Might. So, with a deep breath, Izuku stepped into the city with just the one thought. He was going to beat All Might and show all of his classmates really how strong he was. Even Meliodas was holding back up until this point, so no one really knew how strong the power of these two sins were. So, as Izuku stepped in and the match begun, Izuku would sense All Might was flying down towards him at an incredible speed, rushing towards him as his fist would wind back before slamming it into the side of Izuku's face. However, Izuku didn't budge one bit, merely tanking the blow right as it hit him. Izuku would stare on towards All Might as if giving him a look. "Is that all you're going to do?" Izuku would ask, not through talking, but through just the sheer look of his eyes, and All Might could as day tell, translating what Izuku had just said to him. As All Might would stare on towards Izuku, Izuku would then headbutt All Might right in the head, as Izuku would and grab his fist, wrapping his fingers around one another before slamming it into the chest of All Might, right by his just weak point. As Might would end up being hit right there, Izuku would end up seeing All Might fly up in the air. Izuku would raise his fist up into the air as well, slamming it down onto All Might right as he jumped up to him, which has basically become Izuku's signature move. With All Might on the ropes, All Might's weights that he had been wearing had broken off, as he was now going full speed. All Might would rush towards Izuku, slamming a punch into his gut, however it would only be tanked by Izuku as well. As Izuku
wrap his fist and fingers up once again, slamming this time both of his hands into the sides of All Might, snapping All Might's jaw, breaking it entirely. As it would end up holding his limp jaw as he was only dangling there. All Might would end up calling the match, not wanting just for this brutal scene to be laid out in front of his own class. So with that, Izuku would be given the fighting victory, and this was even more proof to Nezu that Izuku was leaps and bounds ahead of his classmates, and that Izuku was going to become a hero far sooner than any of them else. So Nezu, just as one last speculation, would give Izuku a test. This test was the final test he would have given all of the third years that would basically just tell Nezu if they were ready to become heroes or if they had to be held back for a fourth year in the next or the second years moving up to the third year's class. So as Izuku would go through this test, he would easily ace every single question, as his knowledge from basically just being hero work for that 1 week he was at as All Might's sidekick had proven to be just way too much for everyone else. Izuku was far just stronger and better than all the rest of his classmates, and it showed. Izuku was easily just so much smarter than the rest of them, which is quite shocking considering what he had come from, living off of the street, having to steal things, and now losing his girlfriend. Izuku, however, didn't let this get to him, and was now the smartest in heroics in his own class. Nezu, not wanting who just to have the rest of Izuku's class not be able to take the test, would also give the test to some other people, and Meliodas would be one of the passing grades as well. So with that, we would end up seeing Izuku now becoming a hero. As Izuku becoming a hero would then end up leaving UA. However, he would have to take the hero licensing exam to get his quirk license. Just the fact that he graduated UA with stunning marks isn't going to give him a hero license just willy-nilly. They're not going to be handing it out or throwing it. So Izuku would be forced to stay in UA until he was able to get his license, which came quite quickly, not even a month after the final exams were held. And so with the help of Izuku, they were all able to easily pass through the hero licensing exam, easily getting their hero license and quirk license, allowing for them to be able to use their quirks in public without just the express permission of all the other heroes that might have been around them. So with that, Izuku would officially graduate from UA High School. As with that, Izuku graduating from UA High School, he would leave to become just a new hero. And of course, a new hero on the scene was not going to get as much recognition, say as much as All Might. However, just with the amount of fame Izuku had built up, just from the fact that he had managed to beat Shigaraki, just got him enough fame to be jumped up into the top 100 heroes already, as analysts of heroes who do the rankings would end up looking and just analyzing the fight with Shigaraki, wondering how strong Shigaraki really was, and would end up giving him the determining that Shigaraki just had the strength of within the top 25 heroes. They couldn't accurately do it because it was an unranked person that was fighting them. However, as the years would end up passing and Izuku would end up rising through the ranks, they would end up realizing just how strong Shigaraki was. However, as we cut back after Izuku graduating UA, Meliodas would end up doing the same, following Izuku, as both of them would end up creating just a quite good partner in crime duo type deal. And so with that, with them basically just being partners, they would easily end up defeating all of these villains in their path, as Meliodas would end up seeing a striking resemblance in Izuku, with this resemblance basically just resembling that of Bon, as Meliodas had missed him ever since Bon had kicked him through that mysterious magic portal that one day just showed up. And so, with Izuku being there, Meliodas quite enjoyed Izuku's company. And with doing that, they would end up hunting down all of the crime. I'm not quite sure if I ended up doing the overall thing, since with my lack of uploads, I've basically scaled this series out over 3 weeks. My apologies. Daily uploads should be getting back with tomorrow, the next day, and the next day after that. So I hope you all enjoy me getting back into the swing of things. So with that, Izuku would end up just searching around the city, as he would end up going to Sir Night-Eye's agency looking for help, as Izuku, remember, was still quite a newbie. When he was still a student at UA and the sidekick of All Might, Izuku could get away with small things, but now with him signing with his own agency, with him being in the top 100, having his own agency, along with Meliodas signing with that same agency as well, both of them couldn't really damage too many things, which caused them to hold back a ton. So with his Izuku needing help with finding some major villain things, as Izuku liked rising up in the ranks. Izuku's one dream was to become the #1 hero after all. So Izuku would look towards Mr. Night-Eye, who was All Might's sidekick and was even at one point in the top 10 heroes in just the country. So Izuku, seeking help, would go to Night-Eye, who would end up telling him about a villain he had been searching for quite a while. And this villain he had been searching for was the villain Overhaul. But he cannot rush into Overhaul's facilities just going crazy, as if he were to do this, that would cause Izuku much harm, possibly even killing him, as Sir Night-Eye knew how powerful and strong Overhaul just happened to be, and he didn't want this rookie hero to end up dying just because of their lack of experience, as Night-Eye had seen it all too often. So with that, Izuku and Meliodas would end up just going under Sir Night-Eye's wing, not as a sidekick, just as more learners. Night-Eye had known that Izuku and his sidekick, air quotes there, Meliodas, as he had become, or seen how they had become quite the strong hero duo, stopping many crimes. However, they were still looking for that big rank up crime that was just going to elevate them into stardom. Izuku didn't care about fame, but Izuku's time on the streets knew that with fame came money, and Izuku just didn't want to have the possibility of him getting injured and not being able to be a hero anymore, where he would not be able to make the money that he could as a hero. Izuku didn't want that to happen, so he wanted to make as much money as he could now, so he could do it for very little in the future, allowing for him to take just the jobs that people might not be able to afford, as heroes were even sometimes paid by the public to go and search out a certain villain. So as Izuku and Meliodas would be walking down a certain path, just hunting out this overhauled villain, or this weird villain that Night-Eye had told them about, all of a sudden a young girl would end up bumping right into the path of Izuku. As Izuku would see this, the girl would end up looking up to him, as Izuku would end up looking down back at her. "Oh, hello there," Izuku would say towards her. However, Overhaul would end up looking towards the girl before yelling at her to get away from him, as Izuku's seeing this would end up just questioningly before he would end up looking down at a mugshot that was still in his hand. Overhaul had seen it, as he would end up rushing towards Izuku, going for a punch. However, Izuku would dodge this before propelling his hand right into the chest of Overhaul, pulling it out. As Overhaul's chest now with a huge hole in it, Izuku would grab the hand of Eri before they would end up rushing off. Now, once again, I would just like to say that I'm sorry if I did this Eri arc or this Overhaul arc before, as it's kind of been a while since I did some of these parts, which is just all my fault since I didn't bother uploading, just rather taking a break. So I'm sorry if I basically just recapped the overhaul arc. So once again, I'm sorry. Hopefully you guys can forgive me for that one. We start this final part off with Izuku adopting Eri and the marriage of Mina and Kirishima. Both of them, after years of dating, would finally decide to marry. And we also find out that Izuku would end up finding a girlfriend of his own. This would be Ochako Uraraka. She had watched Izuku have his girlfriend tearing apart from him, and ever since basically he was in UA, she had had a crush on him. And with the death of Toga, which she was very sad for, as Toga was one of her best friends, but also kind of happy for, as Izuku was now on the quote-unquote open market for dating. However, it would take her a while to finally end up asking Izuku out, where she would end up asking him out at their UA graduation, which of course Izuku would and Meliodas would end up being invited to. So as everyone would be leaving, Uraraka would end up asking Izuku out, which Izuku just decided to shrug and say, what the hell, I'll give it a try, as he hadn't dated anyone since the death of Toga over 2 years before this. And so Izuku decided to get back into the game and finally was ready to date again, wanting to have a family. As much as Izuku didn't let it on, the death of Toga really hurt him, as Izuku didn't have much feelings for Toga. They were only together for around 7 or 8 months. However, those months, they had basically lived together in a hut to going to UA. They had risen from the bottom to basically the top, and Izuku had sort of an emotional attachment and bond to her. However, at the death of her, and over the years, Izuku and that just attachment slowly faded away, which allowed for Uraraka to come into his life, which they would end up being very happy together, even with them adopting Eri together, and after 3 years of dating, they would end up marrying, as Izuku would end up just calling Ochako Uraraka, and would even end up taking Uraraka's last name for a little bit before he would finally end up deciding to bring back his own mother's name, Midoriya. It came a while for him basically just to stop just feeling bad about his mother's death. However, it took him even longer to end up bringing his last name back, as for a little while when he was on the streets, he had basically felt like he wasn't doing the family name any good. However, him now in the top 50 heroes at the point he married Uraraka, and Uraraka also being in the top 50 heroes, he had finally felt like the last name should end up coming back. As much as confidence Izuku as much as Izuku was confident, Izuku also didn't want to let his own family down, and so Uraraka would end up becoming Midoriya for both of them, along with Eri. It's kind of mixed up how I pronounce it, just because it looks like Eri, but it's actually Eri. It's strange, but I'll hopefully try to remember Eri, as some of you guys have corrected me in the comments. So with that, we end up cutting into a warehouse with a vengeful villain just training for hours upon hours every single day, with one thought in mind, Eri. And with that one word, I know most of you will end up remembering who this villain is. It's Overhaul, and this villain was ready to take back his prize, the thing that had caused him to be able to create those 5 quirk-canceling bullets. Of those 5, he still has all 5 of them remaining in his collection, and so he was ready to use them on Izuku to make sure he would be able to secure Izuku's now daughter, Eri. And so Uku being highly publicized after these 3 years, now being in the top 50 to the top 25, taking down some pretty notable villains. However, he wasn't the number one hero right away. Izuku didn't want to just go crazy with it. He wanted fame, he wanted the money to just help his family or his going family and himself, which was much like what Uraraka wanted. And so they would end up mainly just focusing on doing as much jobs as possible, which would bring them a lot of fame in the just lesser areas, which weren't like crowded with mega popular villains or mega villains that would rank him up 5 ranks if he were to defeat one. So with that, they would get money from those as they were able to do tons of those missions. And so once they had money, they would finally decide to focus on the bigger villains, which would help just the more general population, which had been Izuku and Izuku's sidekick, well, now partner Meliodas, and just Kirishima, which they had been doing for quite a while, as Izuku's agency had ended up just turning into the Sin Agency, which tied back to just Izuku's in being the fox sin of greed, and Meliodas being the dragon sin of wrath. So with Izuku's ever-growing family, and with him finally being financially stable, he would end up going out into the real world and fighting as just all these super crazy powerful villains that he could, just wanting to fight as many as he could, wanting to save as many people as he could. So with Izuku's heart and mind in the right place, with saving as many people as possible, this would cause him to gain more and more fame until he was basically in the spotlight, as he was now one of the top 10 heroes, along with Bakugo, Todoroki, Kirishima, and Meliodas. With Izuku now in the top 10, this caused his life to become highly publicized, which allowed for Overhaul to end up finding exactly where he was, as the vengeful Overhaul would end up planning out his deed just in exact detail, what street Izuku who lived on, what exact house, Izuku's house layout, with the media making Izuku do a house tour just as sort of an added bonus, which Izuku, regretful as he could, he wasn't the number one hero. He couldn't just say, no, I'm not going to allow that, and tons of people would be like, okay, Izuku's the 9th top pro hero. Sure, he's just the 9th top pro hero in the country, however, that doesn't mean Izuku's still not going to drop if he weren't to do something from the public. As Izuku had rose so fast, they were still kind of skeptic on Izuku's just how good he was with the people, the public, how good he was at defeating villains. Which, looking back, is just quite stupid how the public could view Izuku so crazily when he had stopped Shigaraki just all those years back. So with Overhaul, he would end up sneaking into Izuku's house late one night, creeping down the halls as Izuku's floorboards would echo throughout the halls, as Overhaul would end up pulling out the special weapon he had prepared with the quirk-canceling serum inside. As he would end up opening up Izuku's doors, Izuku's eye would end up opening, hearing the noise, as Izuku had always remained vigilant when sleeping. This was because people would end up coming to his tent when he was young to hopefully just steal some of the stuff Izuku had stolen prior. So Izuku had learned to basically always sleep with one eye open. So as Izuku saw this, Izuku would end up seeing Overhaul walk into his room. As Izuku would end up seeing this, he would end up jumping out of his bed, throwing the covers into the air. As Overhaul would end up firing the serum, it would hit right into just the bed covers that Izuku had thrown into the air, as Izuku would end up rushing towards Overhaul, tackling him to the ground, not before Overhaul had shot off another bullet. As time would start to slow down for Izuku, Izuku would look over towards where the bullet was going, right on towards his sleeping wife, Uraraka, or Ochako Midoriya. As Izuku would be seeing this, he would yell for just Ochako to wake up. However, she would remain motionless, still fast asleep. With Izuku seeing this, he would let go of Overhaul, planting his feet before jumping over towards the bullet, not being able to catch it in time, rather putting his hand out in front of it. As it would end up sticking right into Izuku, Izuku would pull it out, not before some of the serum would go right into him. However, it really did nothing at all. Overhaul would look on, confused at why this was. Why did his powers stay the same? As the serum, with the amount Izuku had gotten, basically had done nothing at all. Izuku had gotten stuck with it, and then pulled it out before the latch, causing all the serum to be sprayed into Izuku's body, had even flipped, so nothing would end up going into Izuku, causing for him just to be insanely lucky. With Overhaul seeing this, he would raise up the weapon once again. However, this time the prepared Izuku would catch all the last 3 bullets before throwing them right back in Overhaul, catching him in the top of the chest, once in the leg, and once in the left arm. As Overhaul would fall down to the ground holding his arms in pain, he would feel the essence of his quirk draining away from him, as would end up just being locked away, as he would end up having to use Eri to unlock it once again. And so, with Eri basically just being adopted in the family of the Midoriyas, he knew he had no chance of getting his quirk back, ever. As Izuku would end up seeing eating it just Overhaul there, Izuku would knock him out before calling the police, where Izuku would then promptly put his house up on the market the next day. As we now cut forward 10 years into the future, the immortal Izuku looks the same as ever, as he is the #1 hero. As with Izuku being the #1 hero, his family would have grown to 2 more kids, 1 boy, a girl, along with Eri. So, with Izuku's family growing, Izuku would hide his house from the public, making sure that no one would peer pressure him into telling anyone ever again. And so Izuku's story would become complete. He had just a family that he had always wanted and made sure to protect them to the fullest. And Izuku would end up having this family until the very end, which Izuku, sensing the end was end up nearing with his wife Ochako on her deathbed, Izuku would end up searching for ways he could give her some of his immortality, which he just happened to find a way to do so, allowing his family to be preserved. However, Izuku, just having the dream of her deathbed, would start this very, very early on, when they were just about in their 20s, right after their marriage. And so Izuku would get this to her very early on, so basically they would never age. And so with this just power that Izuku had gained to give some of his powers away to others, Izuku knew he would try to keep his family just as much as he possibly could. As the one thing Izuku loved more than smashing a villain's face in was family. All the offense, sleeping on dirt, just being Toka's boyfriend, had all led up to him being the #1 hero, saving millions upon millions of people. As Izuku would end up smiling to himself, looking up at the stars after being crowned the #1 hero, as Izuku knew he had finally done it. He was finally successful, and was finally at the one place he wanted to be in life, at the top.
And that is where this What If series comes to an end. I hope you all did enjoy What If Deku had Bond's powers, and if you did, please consider subscribing, as it really does help this channel out. I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.